Somewhere in the remote mountains of Ethiopia, there exists another Bible more complete, longer, and astonishingly different. There, the Book of Enoch was never erased. There, the angel Uriel still whispers warnings of the great flood. And the banned books of the Western Bible are still read as part of daily life. Could it be that part of the truth has been hidden from the rest of the world? And if that's true, what was in these texts that made the powerful churches fear them enough to ban their existence? Tonight, let SleepCodex take you on a 3-hour journey through some of the most mysterious scriptures in sacred history. From the Book of Enoch, once quoted in the New Testament, yet later forbidden, to the Book of Jubilees, a secret Genesis that recounts human history under the watchful eyes of angels. And finally, the books of Maccabees the Three, preserved in full only in the Ethiopian Bible, an epic written in blood, faith, and miracles. You don't need to keep your eyes open to explore. Just listen and let ancient memories slowly unfold through the telling. Every buried secret, every missing page, every fallen angel, every sacred rebellion will be revealed gently, deeply, and soothingly. If you fall asleep along the way, that's perfectly okay. Because sometimes, it is in sleep that the most sacred truths begin to take root within the soul. Now find a comfortable position, and let us begin this journey together. What is the Ethiopian Bible? Imagine a version of the Bible that's older, longer, and includes entire books. You may have never heard of books about angels, ancient giants, and visions of the cosmos. That's the Ethiopian Bible. This isn't just another translation or version of the Christian scriptures. The Ethiopian Bible, also called the Ge'ez Bible, is the oldest complete Christian Bible in existence, dating back as early as the 4th century CE, possibly even earlier in oral tradition. It's written in Ge'ez, an ancient Semitic language that is now liturgical, much like Latin in the Roman Catholic Church. But what truly sets it apart is its content. While the typical Protestant Bible has 66 books and the Catholic Bible includes 73, the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church recognizes a staggering 81 canonical books, making it the most extensive biblical canon in the world. The Ethiopian Bible was compiled and preserved by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, one of the oldest Christian churches on earth. This church was officially established in the 4th century, long before Christianity spread to Europe, and has maintained its own canon, free from the later edits, exclusions, and councils of Rome and Constantinople. It was written for the Ethiopian people, but more broadly, it reflects an ancient Christian worldview that retained texts considered too mystical, controversial, or apocalyptic by later Western church authorities. Unlike many Western branches of Christianity, the Ethiopian tradition places strong emphasis on Enochian writings. Angelology and pre-flood knowledge ideas, often labeled as heretical or symbolic elsewhere. While the Protestant Bible contains 66 books and the Catholic Bible has 73, the Ethiopian Bible includes a remarkable 81 books, many of which have been excluded or banned from the rest of the Christian world. The Book of Enoch. This is perhaps the most famous among them. It tells the story of the fallen angels, known as the Watchers. Celestial beings who descended to earth, taught humanity forbidden knowledge, and fathered a race known as the Nephilim, giant half-divine beings. The book offers vivid descriptions of the heavens, cosmic gates, celestial cycles, and universal time. The Book of Jubilees, often referred to as Little Genesis, this book rewrites the entire history from Adam to Moses with precise chronological order under the supervision of angels. It fills in many details omitted in the Book of Genesis, other apocryphal books. These include Tobit, Wisdom of Solomon, Baruch 2, Esdras, Shepherd of Hermas, Ascension of Isaiah, and notably Maccabees of the Three, the Ethiopian versions of which differ greatly from the Catholic Maccabees. Some of these texts are no longer recognized by any other church. What makes the Ethiopian Bible even more unique is that it was never subjected to censorship by the Roman Empire or Western church councils. It has preserved early Christian beliefs about the pre-flood world, powerful angels, and the relationship between humans and the heavens. For scholars, it is a historical treasure that reveals how the earliest Christians truly believed. And for seekers of ancient wisdom, it serves as a reminder that truth is not always determined by the majority, but by that which is faithfully preserved through millennia, despite being forgotten by the world. The Book of Enoch, the forbidden chronicle of the celestial realm. Among the hundreds of ancient texts excluded from the official Bible, the Book of Enoch stands out as one of the most mysterious and controversial. Written before the Common Era in Ge'ez and Aramaic and lost to the West for over 1,500 years, it has been preserved in full only in the Ethiopian Bible. This is not just a religious manuscript. It is a map of the heavens, a chronicle of fallen angels, and a timeless warning for humanity. The Book of Enoch is divided into 5 major sections, each opening a doorway into worlds that modern science still struggles to explain. The Book of the Watchers. The first part recounts the descent of 200 angels known as the Watchers, who came down to earth out of desire for human women. They took them as wives and gave birth to a race called the Nephilim giants that were half human, half divine, violent, and uncontrollable. They became a great threat to mankind, and they became pregnant, and they bare great giants. And the giants consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. One of the angels, Exile, taught humans forbidden knowledge, how to make weapons, mirrors, jewelry, dyes, and cosmetics, introducing vanity, warfare, and moral corruption. And Exile taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and the beautifying of the eyelids. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray, and became corrupt in all their ways. Seeing the chaos, God commanded the archangel Michael to bind the Watchers in darkness to await judgment in the abyss. Go bind Semjaza and his associates. Bind them fast for 70 generations under the valleys of the earth till the day of their judgment. The Book of Parables, chapters 37-71. This section introduces a mysterious figure known as the Son of Man, chosen by God to judge the fallen angels and bring justice to the world. Many scholars see this as a prefiguration of the Christ figure, though the identity of the Son of Man remains enigmatic. The Astronomical Book, chapters 70-82. This is perhaps the most detailed ancient cosmological record known to survive from antiquity. Enoch is guided by the angel Uriel across the 4 corners of the heavens, where he witnesses the cycles of the sun, moon, stars, and the portals of light through which celestial bodies pass. The calendar described has precisely 364 days divided into 4 perfect seasons, completely separate from the Jewish or Roman calendars. The year was exactly 364 days long. Neither more nor less, this was the number appointed for the righteous to walk uprightly before the face of the Lord. The Dream Visions, chapters 83-90. Here Enoch records 2 major visions. One foretells the coming of the great flood, while the other presents a symbolic retelling of human history. In this vision, different animals represent different peoples. Sheep for Israel, bulls for the righteous, wolves for oppressors, depicting the unfolding of divine justice through time. The Epistle of Enoch, chapters 91-108. In the final section, Enoch delivers moral teachings and prophecies to future generations. He divides the history of the world into 10 weeks or eras, ending with the rebirth of the earth, the destruction of evil, and the eternal reign of the righteous. And after the 10th week, there shall be the eternal judgment. And a new heaven shall appear, and all the powers of heaven shall shine forever with 7-fold light. The Book of Enoch is more than just an ancient manuscript. It is a sacred reminder, a message from God delivered to humanity long ago. It tells us that there was once a time when humans lived under the watchful care of angels, that the earth was shared by giants and by creatures as small as dust, all coexisting in a delicate order established by heaven. But when humans turned away from God, when they chased after forbidden knowledge, when they no longer feared the divine laws, the sacred vanished, and chaos began to return. The Book of Enoch is not just a record of the past. It is a prophecy, a warning that when morality declines, when humanity forgets to believe in something higher, then just like in the beginning, the darkness will come again. And it did once, when a group of fallen angels left the heavens and descended to earth. They brought light, but they also sowed the seeds of devastation. Coming up next, the legend of the Grigori, the fallen angels in the Book of Enoch. Before the time of the Great Flood, before humanity built kingdoms or wrote epics, there was a rebellion, one not led by man, but by divine beings, created to guard the balance between heaven and earth. The Book of Enoch calls them Grigori, or the Watchers. They were sent by God to observe humanity, not to intervene, not to instruct, but to watch in silence and report on mankind's actions. But the more they watched, the more they grew attached. That attachment turned into desire, and desire soon became an irreversible decision. Their leader, the mighty angel Semjaza, feared that if he acted alone, punishment would fall solely upon him. So he called the other Watchers together and proposed a pact they would all descend to earth. Take human wives and share the consequence equally. Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. Then Semjaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear you will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him, and said, Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Thus the 200 angels descended from heaven to earth. They landed upon the sacred peak of Mount Hermon, and there they swore an unbreakable oath never to return to the heavens. They would marry human women, father children, and walk the earth as fallen beings. From these forbidden unions came a new race, the Nephilim, giants born of heaven and earth. Towering and powerful, they were at first revered as demigods. But soon their hunger became insatiable, and they became pregnant, and they bare great giants, whose height was 3,000 ells, who consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Meanwhile, the Watchers began to teach humanity the secret knowledge that had been forbidden. Exile taught men how to forge swords, knives, shields, and breastplates, how to make mirrors, bracelets, ornaments, and cosmetics. Semjaza taught enchantments and root cuttings. Baruch taught astrology, Kokabeel the constellations. Penemu taught writing, and Kazdeja revealed the courses of the moon and the signs. And Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. These teachings corrupted the earth. Human beings, once innocent, now learned to manipulate, control, seduce, and destroy. Wickedness spread, and the balance between heaven and earth shattered. The earth cried out, and the voice of the righteous rose to heaven. God grew angry. He summoned 4 great archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, and commanded them to descend to earth and pass judgment. Semjaza and the fallen angels were bound in chains and cast into the abyss beneath the earth, where they would remain in darkness until the day of judgment. Azazel was buried under sharp stones in the desert of Dudael. Their children, the Nephilim, were to be destroyed by the great flood, erased as if they had never existed. Bind Semjaza and his associates who have united themselves with women. Cast them into the abyss of the earth. Cover their faces that they may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment, he shall be cast into the fire. The earth was remade, balance was restored. But the Book of Enoch warns, the forbidden knowledge of the Watchers was not destroyed. It survived, hidden in symbols buried in forgotten scrolls, or perhaps echoed in the very scientific advancements we now deem modern. The Grigori, once divine guardians, fell for love, but their fall unleashed chaos that humanity is still paying for. And today, as morality fades and faith is dismissed, one must wonder, are the shadows of the Watchers beginning to stir once more? Nephilim, the hybrid giants between heaven and earth. If the Grigori were the fallen angels, then the Nephilim were their greatest consequence. They were not just the result of a forbidden union between divine and human, but a symbol that the boundary between heaven and earth had once been shattered. From the moment they were born, the Nephilim possessed power far beyond human comprehension. According to the Book of Enoch, they stood 3,000 ells tall, an unfathomable height, towering over all creatures of the earth. They were born to the daughters of men and the Watchers' angels, who had been sent to earth only to observe. But when the Watchers broke the divine order, took wives, and fathered children, the cosmic balance was disrupted. The Nephilim were the result of that imbalance, half divine, half mortal, yet fully belonging to neither realm. At first, they were revered as demigods, admired for their strength, stature, and advanced knowledge. But it wasn't long before reverence turned to fear. The giants consumed all the acquisitions of men. And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Destruction followed. The Nephilim not only killed, but devoured others. Blood was spilled. The earth became defiled. Mankind, once protected by God, now lived in fear of the very beings who bore a trace of the divine. Remarkably, Genesis 6:4 also confirms the existence of the Nephilim. There were giants in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old men of renown. In other words, even in the canonical Bible, the idea of Nephilim was never entirely erased, just briefly mentioned, then left unexplained. And not only before the flood, Numbers 13:33 records the spies of Israel reporting what they saw. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Enoch, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. So even after the great flood, it seems that remnants of the Nephilim may have survived, whether through bloodlines or some unknown re-emergence beyond human understanding. Did they disappear completely, or merely retreat into the shadows? The Book of Enoch doesn't say for sure, but it leaves a chilling warning. When the angels were punished, the souls of their offspring, the slain Nephilim, were not allowed to return to heaven or rest in peace. They became wandering spirits upon the earth, sowing chaos. And now the giants who are produced from the spirits and flesh shall be called evil spirits upon the earth, and on the earth shall be their dwelling. Evil spirits have proceeded from their bodies, because they are born from men and from the holy Watchers. They shall be evil spirits on earth, and evil spirits shall they be called. As for the spirits of heaven, in heaven shall be their dwelling. But as for the spirits of the earth, which were born upon the earth, on the earth shall be their dwelling. This is why some scholars believe that many phenomena described as demons, malevolent ghosts, or even modern UFO entities may bear traces of the Nephilim or of the dark spirits they left behind. They were not destroyed. They were not redeemed. They simply waited in the shadows in forgotten memory and in mysteries science has yet to explain. Uriel, the angel of wisdom, light, and the final warning. When human blood soaked the earth and the cries of mankind echoed across the sky, echoes of terror, betrayal, and helplessness in the face of the Nephilim's brutality, heaven could no longer remain silent. God was angered. The universe, once woven in divine order, had been twisted by those entrusted with its care. And as the world approached the brink of collapse, 4 archangels were sent down, each bearing the wrath of heaven. Among them, Uriel held a role unlike the others. He was not a warrior like Michael, nor an executioner like Gabriel. Uriel was the lamp in the darkness, the embodiment of pure wisdom. He did not come to destroy, but to illuminate. And his first mission was to warn. He was sent to a man, one man still righteous among the wicked. His name was Noah. And Uriel, with a voice soft as morning mist, yet filled with the weight of eternity, said, "Hide thyself, for a great destruction is approaching." It was not a threat. It was mercy, the final echo of divine compassion, and the beginning of the ark that would carry the seed of mankind through the storm. But Uriel's story didn't end there. As the floodwaters rose and the earth was cleansed, he was given a higher task to guide Enoch. Enoch, a mortal man whose soul shone so pure, he was taken into the heavens without tasting death. And the one chosen to lead him through the celestial realms was Uriel. He didn't just show Enoch the gates of the sun and moon, but unveiled the hidden laws of the cosmos, the cycles of light, the rhythms of the seasons, the angels assigned to each star, and even the most desolate places where the souls of fallen angels were imprisoned. When Enoch once asked about a cold, howling wind from the west, Uriel pointed to a rift on the edge of the sky and said, "This is the prison of the angels, and there they shall be confined forever." Uriel also revealed what would come at the final judgment, when the fallen watchers would be cast into eternal darkness. The Nephilim erased from creation, and only those who kept the light within would be brought into the eternal realm. These were not mere prophecies. They were revelations granted only to Enoch, and through him to those willing to listen. It was Uriel who ensured that these truths were recorded, that the wisdom of the heavens would not die with one man, but be preserved in what we now call the Book of Enoch. In that book, Uriel is not a background figure. He is the guide, the guardian of hidden knowledge, the key to mysteries that even modern science has yet to unravel. He did not preach doctrines. He taught through vision. He did not argue. He showed. And the deeper Enoch journeyed with Uriel, the clearer it became this universe was not chaos. It moved in a sacred rhythm, divine, harmonious, and filled with grace. But such knowledge was soon forgotten, or worse, erased, because it was too dangerous, too ancient, too divine, too incompatible with sanctioned doctrine, too scientific for faith. And perhaps that is why the Book of Enoch, carrying Uriel's revelations, was cast out of the Western canon. Yet in Ethiopia, where faith was untouched by Roman decree, those words were preserved. And whenever someone opens that ancient text, tracing the faded lines of ink in the shadows, Uriel's light flickers once more. The Great Flood, heaven's final purification. When Uriel fulfilled his mission to deliver the warning, he quietly withdrew from the earth. But the light he left behind, his whispered message to Noah, remained like a single seed of hope buried in a field long gone rotten. Everything else descended into shadow. Across the world, the Nephilim continued their reign of terror. The Watchers, now fully fallen, no longer bothered to conceal their actions. They openly taught humans forbidden arts, weapon-making, sorcery, enchantments, and dark knowledge meant only for the divine. Humanity no longer prayed to heaven. They turned instead to the very beings that had fallen from it. A world once built on light now knelt before chaos. And then God spoke. No more waiting, no more mercy. The time for cleansing had come. Gabriel was sent to set the giants against one another. "Let the children of sin destroy themselves," God declared. Raphael received the command to bind Azazel, the corrupter of mankind, and imprison him in the burning wilderness of Dudail. Michael led the heavenly host to descend upon the Watchers, chaining them with iron bonds and casting them into the deep abyss of Tartarus, a place where light would never reach again. And when all had been set into motion, the full wrath of heaven was unleashed upon the earth in a flood unlike anything the world had ever seen. The sun vanished. The earth cracked open. The gates of the heavens and the fountains of the deep burst forth together. Waters poured from above, Waters surged from below. In the midst of humanity's screaming, the cries of beasts and the thunder of angels executing divine judgment, the earth was swallowed whole by the great flood. Only Noah remained adrift in a silent ark upon a world now drowned, carrying with him the seeds of life and heaven's final reminder to mankind. This is what happens when man forgets who created him. Noah's Ark, the final seed of righteousness. Before catastrophe struck in a world filled with violence and darkness, there was one man who still carried a light in his soul. He was neither wealthy nor powerful, but he lived truthfully, quietly choosing what was right, even as the rest of mankind chased after desire and dominance. That man's name was Noah. Scripture tells us Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked with God. As all light began to fade, Noah remained the final flicker in the night, and for that he was chosen. Uriel, the angel of light, was sent to deliver a warning, not so that Noah could escape, but so that he could prepare a sanctuary for the future. According to divine instruction, Noah began to build a massive ark made of gopher wood, over 130 meters long, 20 meters wide, and 13 meters high, an unimaginable feat in his time. And yet, he obeyed. Without complaint, under the skeptical eyes of his neighbors, mocked and ridiculed, Noah kept working steadily, faithfully, each wooden beam laid as if building a temple, not for worship, but for life itself. God also instructed him on how to preserve life upon the ark. You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive. With you 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, of every kind of creature that moves along the ground. They will come to you to be kept alive. You are to take every kind of food that is to be eaten and store it away as food for you and for them. And then, just as foretold, God did not delay. The flood came swift and unrelenting. Rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. The waters rose for 157 days without pause, drowning mountains, swallowing cities, and washing away all living things. The earth became silent. After 150 days, the waters began to recede. The great ark, drifting over an endless sea, came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat, what is now believed to be in the eastern region of modern-day Turkey, near the borders of Armenia and Iran. 40 days later, Noah released a dove. It returned, carrying an olive leaf in its beak, proof that the waters had withdrawn and that life somehow had begun again. Since that day, the image of a dove with an olive branch has been seen as a symbol of peace across the world. And so, Noah opened the ark. Every creature stepped out onto solid ground once more, as the world took its first breath after the storm. Then the Lord made a covenant with Noah and declared to all humankind, "Be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth. But know this, if your hands spill the blood of others, your own blood shall be required of you." And so we must ask, was Noah's Ark merely a tale passed down through generations? Or was it a preserved truth hidden in plain sight? Let's uncover the mystery right now. Noah's Ark, just a legend, or was it actually found? Many have long believed that the story of the Great Flood was simply a myth, and that Noah's massive ark was nothing more than a symbolic image from ancient scriptures. But what if the truth was far more literal than we ever imagined? Over the years, archaeologists and historians have uncovered a series of strange anomalies in Mesopotamia, the cradle of early civilization. Thick layers of sediment, sudden fossil deposits, scattered as if by a massive wave. All of it curiously aligned with the biblical account of a flood that once swallowed the entire earth. And the story becomes even more fascinating when a group of researchers from Hong Kong made a stunning claim. They believe they found Noah's Ark resting high upon Mount Ararat in Turkey. Since this discovery was first announced over 2 decades ago, it has sparked intense debate across the academic world. In a widely circulated photograph, Members of the team can be seen investigating a large wooden structure, which they believe to be the remnants of the Ark. One researcher said, "I can't say with 100% certainty that this is Noah's Ark, but I'm 99.9% sure it is." And really, when you're 99.9% sure, what more needs to be said? Even more astonishing, on June 20th, 1987, the Turkish government officially recognized the boat-shaped formation on Mount Ararat 2,000 meters above sea level as Noah's Ark. They declared it a National Heritage Site, and the area was designated as an archaeological park protected for future generations. If true, this would stand as one of the most significant discoveries in both historical and biblical archaeology. And the story of the Great Flood, once dismissed as allegory, may in fact be a long-buried memory, rising once again from the earth beneath our feet. But perhaps the most important lesson wasn't in the Ark itself, but in what happened before it. Because every time human morality begins to fall when the world is overwhelmed by greed, violence, and indifference, that is when disasters arise as a warning, a reminder that we always have a choice between good and evil. And only those who hold on to their faith, who live with kindness and righteousness, will find shelter and mercy in the eyes of God. And then, what happened after the Great Flood had ended? The Bible tells us that humanity began a new chapter. But the trials were far from over. People continued to make mistakes, forgetting the warnings given long before the flood. And once again, God had to send his angels down to earth to correct, to remind, and to record every misstep of mankind. It was in this stream of sacred history that the Book of Jubilees, also known as the Little Genesis, came into being. The Book of Jubilee, a silent revelation from heaven. There is a book once referred to by the ancients as the voice of angels within human history. It is not read aloud in churches, nor recognized by the major councils of Christianity. Yet it is carefully preserved in the Ethiopian Bible as a sacred gem, a hidden light buried beneath the shadows of time. This is the Book of Jubilees, also known as the Little Genesis. According to the text itself, the entire content was revealed to Moses by the angel Uriel during his time on Mount Sinai, right after the Exodus from Egypt. This wasn't merely a retelling, it was a divine revelation with a purpose to restore humanity's understanding of history from heaven's perspective and to record every event exactly as it happened through the eyes of the angels. Write down for yourself all the words which I shall speak to you on this mountain. The history of the times, according to the years of the Jubilees, from the day of creation until the day of revelation. Thus, the Book of Jubilees recounts the entire history from Adam to Moses, not in a loose chronological order, but through sacred time broken into 49-year cycles called Jubilees, each representing forgiveness, release, and a divine reset. This isn't just a historical retelling. It's a celestial timeline crafted to remind humanity of its origins and its covenant with the divine. Unlike the modern Book of Genesis, Jubilees includes many details that were either removed or forgotten in later versions. It answers questions like, who taught humans about war, sorcery, and idol worship? Who planted chaos before the Great Flood? And why out of all people did God choose Abraham? Within its pages, these mysteries are not left open. The answers are delivered by the angels themselves, eyewitnesses to the ancient world. And the sons of the Watchers, those giants, taught humans enchantments, cutting of roots, sorcery, and the binding of curses. Jubilees 10. This passage directly continues the narrative from the Book of Enoch. After the Watchers were punished, their surviving offspring, the Nephilim, passed on forbidden knowledge to later generations. The Book of Jubilees is one of the only surviving texts to preserve this record in detail. Throughout the book, there is a constant theme of angelic supervision. Every act of humanity is observed, documented, and brought before the Lord. For the righteous, angels record their good deeds. For the wicked, they plead for mercy, but also ensure justice is done. One striking moment describes how Mastema, the embodiment of temptation and judgment, asks God for permission to retain a portion of evil spirits. Let 1/10 of them remain before me, that they may fulfill my will among the sons of men and cause them to stray. For the evil of the wicked is great. Jubilees. God agrees not to abandon humanity, but to preserve free will. Temptation, then, is not punishment, but a test, a mirror to reveal the heart's true direction. What makes Jubilees so unique is its rigorous chronology. Major events are precisely dated within the Jubilee framework. Adam's creation, Noah's birth, the rise of Abraham, and the journey of Jacob, each placed carefully within divine time. This allows readers to trace the full arc of the Old Testament and even prepares the foundation for later messianic prophecies. Yet it was precisely this clarity and divergence from Roman-approved narratives that led the Book of Jubilees to be excluded from Western theology. It was never included in the Latin Vulgate, nor in the Greek Septuagint. Only in the Ethiopian tradition, untouched by Roman censorship, was it preserved in full in the ancient Ge'ez language. What's remarkable is how the book begins. The angel Uriel leads Moses to a high place and unveils all of history, past, present, and future. He is instructed to write it down, not as prophecy, but as a record to prevent forgetfulness. Teach them the Jubilees and the laws, so they will know which days are holy, which years are for release, and when to return to righteousness. This is not just a warning. It is a divine reminder that real history is not what empires choose to preserve, but what heaven sees and remembers, even if mankind forgets. And yet, the journey through the ancient pages of the Ethiopian Bible does not end there. For what comes next leads us into an entirely different era, one no longer filled with guiding angels or mountaintop revelations, but with a brutal uprising for faith, where human beings amidst suffering and bloodshed chose not to bow before the powers that sought to extinguish the light of God. This is where the books of Maccabees Y3 take the stage. Unlike the versions preserved in the Catholic canon, the Maccabean texts in the Ethiopian Bible carry a tone that is distinctly different, deeper, more sorrowful, and a vivid testament to unwavering loyalty to divine truth, even when the cost is life itself. The books of Maccabees Y3 in the Ethiopian Bible. After the prophecies of Enoch and the celestial visions found in the Book of Jubilee, our journey through the Ethiopian Bible takes a dramatic turn. We are no longer in the realm of angels or heavenly portals, but down on the earth in a world of fire, blood, and human courage. These are no longer visions from above, but an epic written in human sacrifice and unwavering devotion. This is the trilogy of Maccabees Y3 texts, preserved in full only in the Ethiopian Bible, carrying an eternal message: faith can be threatened, but never extinguished. The story begins in the 2nd century BCE. At that time, the kingdom of Israel was under the rule of the Seleucid Empire, descendants of Alexander the Great. Under King Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the foreign government began to forcibly suppress the Jewish faith, destroying the temple in Jerusalem, banning Torah practices, and forcing the people to worship Greek gods. The oppression was not only physical, but aimed to uproot faith itself. Yet from a small village called Modian, a priest named Mattathias rose in resistance. Alongside his sons, especially Judas Maccabeus, who came to be known as the Hammer of God, they led a remarkable revolt. In Maccabees I, the story does more than recount battles and victories. It revives the spirit of a struggle not for power, but for loyalty to the Lord. Amidst fire and cruelty, they held firm to their faith. Judas and his warriors carried scripture with them into every campaign, praying before each battle. They did not only reclaim the desecrated temple, but purified it and established Hanukkah, the festival of lights lasting 8 nights, commemorating the flame of faith that would never be snuffed out. As we turn to Maccabees 2, the story shifts to a deeper emotional register. Each chapter echoes with voices from the home front, mothers losing their sons, yet refusing to renounce their belief. Elders walking into death so as not to betray their covenant with God. One of the most heartbreaking moments tells of a mother and her 7 sons tortured one by one to force them to abandon their faith. Yet each, beneath their mother's tearful gaze, chose death over disobedience. She did not weep aloud, nor waver, but softly encouraged them. Be brave, my sons. Choose true life, not this fleeting one on earth. This was not just a tale of sacrifice. It became a symbol of the spiritual strength of women in the history of faith. Then comes Maccabees 3, a lesser-known chapter, but one of profound meaning. This time the story is set not in Israel, but in Egypt, under the reign of King Ptolemy IV Philopator. This pagan king ordered the genocide of tens of thousands of Jews, forcing them into a giant arena where elephants were meant to trample them to death. But when the blade was ready to fall upon their faith, a miracle occurred. The elephants turned back and trampled the king's own soldiers instead. No one could explain it. Yet in Maccabees 3, this was written as testimony, that when faith stands unshaken, even nature listens. Though different in place and character, all three Maccabees books in the Ethiopian Bible tell the same truth. The light of faith cannot be crushed by power or steel. Hunted, tortured, starved, those within these pages chose to keep their covenant with God even at the cost of their lives. And perhaps that is exactly why these texts were excluded from most Western versions of the Bible. Because they do more than speak of belief and morality. They reveal the danger of a faith that cannot be controlled. But in Ethiopia, these stories were never erased. They are still read, still honored, living within the collective memory as a testament that the history of the persecuted deserves to be remembered just as much as the history of the powerful. The Martyrdom of Isaiah, when faith came at the cost of life. There was a time long before Christ walked the earth when prophets still wandered among kings, uninvited messengers, bearing words that no one wanted to hear. One of them was Isaiah, a man of vision, a man of warning, a man who dared to speak truth even when it was dangerous to do so. The story of Isaiah didn't end with just prophecy, it ended in martyrdom. According to the Ethiopian tradition and ancient texts, such as the Ascension of Isaiah, Isaiah met his end under the reign of King Manasseh, one of the most corrupt and idolatrous rulers in the history of Judah. Manasseh, the son of the righteous King Hezekiah, did not walk in his father's footsteps. Instead, he rebuilt the altars to Baal, erected idols in the very temple of the Lord, and even practiced witchcraft and child sacrifice. Under his rule, Jerusalem turned into a city soaked in spiritual darkness, and Isaiah would not stay silent. He called out the king's abominations. He spoke of visions where the heavens opened, and he saw the Lord sitting on a throne high and exalted. He warned of judgment, of a coming Savior, of a time when the earth would be full of the knowledge of the Lord as waters cover the sea. But Manasseh would not listen. His heart was hard, his ears closed, and the prophet's words became unbearable to him. So he hunted Isaiah down. According to the text, Isaiah fled into the wilderness, hiding in the hollow of a tree. But the king's men found him, and in one of the most gruesome accounts of martyrdom recorded in ancient scripture, they sawed the prophet in two while he was still alive, hidden inside the tree. No cries of pain were written. No pleading, only silence, as if the prophet knew that his blood would become part of a greater covenant. That truth must sometimes be sealed with sacrifice. Centuries later, the book of Hebrews in the New Testament would refer to those who were sawn in two as examples of enduring faith. Isaiah's death was not in vain. His prophecies would echo through generations. His words of the virgin birth, the suffering servant, the coming of Emmanuel. His vision of peace so powerful that swords would be beaten into plowshares. And yet, in that dark moment on the forest floor, surrounded by hatred, Isaiah stood for something eternal. A man who chose faith over fear, who refused to conform, who paid the ultimate price, and was remembered not for how he died, but for the truth he dared to speak. So tonight, as we revisit these ancient stories, may the martyrdom of Isaiah remind us that sometimes even the softest voice can shake the highest throne. And even when silenced, faith endures. The martyrs of Eleazar and the 7 sons, blood spilled for faith. Not long after the prophets fell silent, another darkness descended on the people of Israel. This time it was not a flood or fire, not judgment from the heavens, but tyranny from an earthly throne. In the 2nd century BCE, the Seleucid king Antiochus IV Epiphanes sought to crush the Jewish faith, desecrate the temple in Jerusalem, and force the people to abandon the laws of Moses. He did not simply outlaw belief, he criminalized tradition, punishing those who would not eat pork, who kept the Sabbath, or who refused to bow to idols. What came next was not just political oppression, but spiritual warfare. In the Book of Maccabees, preserved in full in the Ethiopian Bible, we are given a window into one of the most harrowing stories of martyrdom in all of Jewish history. It begins with Eleazar. He was 90 years old, a revered teacher of the law known for his wisdom and unwavering character. When forced to eat pork in front of the public, an act meant to humiliate the faithful, he refused. Even when sympathetic guards offered to switch the meat so he could pretend Eleazar declined. "I would rather go to the grave, with honor," he said, "than live with shame." And so he was tortured and beaten to death, not for what he did, but for what he refused to do. But even more haunting was what came next. A mother and her 7 sons were brought before the king. They too were ordered to renounce the law, to eat swine's flesh, to bow to the gods of Greece. But one by one, they refused. One by one, they were tortured limb by limb, bone by bone. The first son died with these words, "We are ready to die rather than transgress the laws of our ancestors." The second son lost his tongue, his limbs, but not his conviction. "You may deprive us of this present life, but the King of the universe will raise us up." Each of the 7 brothers endured unspeakable torment, but not one recanted. And their mother stood beside them through it all. She didn't scream. She didn't flee. Instead, she spoke to each of her sons with calm and fierce love. "Do not fear this butcher," she whispered. "Accept death so that in his mercy I may receive you back again." She was the last to die. This was no ordinary act of martyrdom. It was a spiritual rebellion. A declaration that faith, even in the face of annihilation, was worth more than breath. That the commandments handed down through generations could not be broken even under threat of sword or flame. Their deaths sent ripples through history. And in time, Judas Maccabeus and his warriors would rise not only to avenge the fallen, but to reclaim the temple and restore the light of faith to a nation almost crushed. And so we remember that faith is not always quiet. Sometimes it burns through agony. Sometimes it bleeds through generations. And sometimes it is written not with ink, but with blood. As we let our minds drift deeper into these ancient echoes, we are reminded once more what we believe shapes not only how we live, but how we die. Would you like me to connect this story to the Hanukkah miracle next? Or transition to another forbidden book from the Ethiopian Bible like the Book of Tobit or Baruch? The Book of Tobit, Miracles in Exile. After the cries of the martyrs faded into memory, not all stories of faith were written in blood. Some were whispered through quiet acts of kindness, through prayers uttered in the shadows, and through miracles that unfolded far from any battlefield. In the Book of Tobit, preserved in full within the Ethiopian Bible, we find one such story. A story not of soldiers or kings, but of a man named Tobit, a woman named Sarah, and an angel named Raphael. Tobit was a righteous man living in exile among the Israelites who had been scattered and oppressed in Nineveh. Though surrounded by idolatry and cruelty, he kept the commandments of God. He gave food to the hungry, clothes to the poor, and most dangerously buried the bodies of the dead, even when the king had forbidden it. One day, after burying a murdered countryman, Tobit returned home and rested in the courtyard. As he slept, bird droppings fell into his eyes. He awoke blind. His world dimmed not just physically, but spiritually. His kindness had led to his suffering, And yet, Tobit did not curse God. He prayed, "O Lord, command my spirit to be taken from me, that I may be released and become earth." His voice was quiet. His soul was tired. But even in sorrow, he remained faithful. Far away in the city of Ecbatana, a young woman named Sarah cried out in desperation. 7 times she had been betrothed, and 7 times her husbands had died, each slain by a demon named Asmodeus, on their wedding night. Rumors swirled that she was cursed. Even her maids mocked her. And like Tobit, Sarah prayed not for revenge, but for release. "O Lord, I am yours. If it is your will, take me." And then, a quiet answer came. God sent Raphael, the angel of healing, disguised as a traveler named Azariah. He journeyed with Tobit's son Tobias, guiding him on a path that would heal more than blindness. Along the way, Tobias caught a great fish. Raphael told him, "Keep the heart, the liver, and the gall. They are not useless." And indeed they weren't. For when Tobias reached Ecbatana and met Sarah, he loved her not for fear or pity, but with gentle courage. On their wedding night, he followed Raphael's instruction. Burning the fish's liver and heart, he cast out the demon Asmodeus, who fled in rage. The shadow that had haunted Sarah was gone. And when they returned home, Tobias took the gall of the fish and touched it to his father's eyes. Light returned. Tobit could see again not just the world, but the path of God clear and radiant. The Book of Tobit is not long nor dramatic like tales of conquest, but it carries something quietly profound. It teaches that exile is not the end, that miracles happen not just on mountaintops or in temples, but in kitchens, courtyards, and in the hearts of those who keep faith through despair. That healing comes in strange forms: a fish, a prayer, a stranger on the road. And above all, it reminds us that no exile is forever, and no prayer is unheard, even the ones whispered in the dark. Would you like the next section to explore the Book of Baruch with its mysterious voice of exile and hidden prophecy? Or transition toward another miracle-filled tale like the Book of Jubilees and the calendars of the angels? The Book of Baruch, Prophecies from Babylon. After the gentle glow of Tobit's healing miracle fades from memory, our journey drifts further into a quieter, more solemn place in Scripture. There are no angels disguised as travelers, no miraculous exorcisms or gallant returns. Instead, what remains are prayers, soft, aching, persistent prayers, spoken by a people in exile, echoing through the silence, waiting for a whisper of mercy from heaven. This is the Book of Baruch, found in the Catholic and Eastern Orthodox Bibles, but absent from Jewish and most Protestant canons. This sacred text is traditionally attributed to Baruch, the faithful scribe of the prophet Jeremiah. Yet many scholars believe it may be a compilation shaped by multiple voices from among those who survived the destruction of Jerusalem and were carried off to Babylon. As the holy city crumbled, as the temple was defiled, and as the people were bound and marched into exile, it was Baruch who gathered the shards of memory and wove them into a lament. His words were not cries for vengeance, but whispers of remorse, humble, unflinching self-examination. Baruch does not blame the conquerors. He does not curse foreign kings. Instead, he confesses, "We have sinned before you. We have turned our backs on the light, and now we sit in darkness." It is the voice of a broken people, but not a defeated one. Amid the sorrow, Baruch tells the story of Israel, not as a tale of conquest, but as a father might tell his child about the ancient wonders of their past. That once they were led by a pillar of fire, that once they were fed by manna in the desert, that once God himself walked with them through wilderness and war. And now he urges seek wisdom not in war horses or swords, but in the law and in the reverence of the Lord. Then comes the most tender passage of all. At the end of the book, Baruch dares to imagine a new Jerusalem, not one covered in ash and ruin, but as a mother waiting with open arms for her lost children to come home. He writes, "Jerusalem, take off the robe of mourning and misery. put on forever the splendor of God's glory. For God will lead Israel with joy by the light of his glory, with mercy and righteousness. No miracle descends from the sky. No battle is won. There are only words, and yet those words were strong enough to keep a scattered people tethered to hope. The Book of Baruch is a quiet echo from the depths of exile. Not to scream for rescue, but to remind us sometimes faith doesn't roar. Sometimes it only needs a heart that still turns toward the light. And in that silence, you may hear the footsteps of God drawing near. And then a quiet question begins to rise from the margins of the sacred texts. If God allowed Israel to fall because they had turned away from his law, then what about Babylon, the empire that crushed them? Is there a price so great that even the most powerful kingdoms cannot escape it? Because only a few generations later, Babylon itself, glorious, mighty, proud, in its peak crumbled in a fall no one saw coming. What truly happened? Why did the throne of Mesopotamia's greatest kings turn to ashes? Let us now drift once more through the corridors of time. To the fateful night when a mysterious hand wrote on the walls of Babylon a final warning that no one understood until it was too late. Why was the kingdom of Babylon destroyed? The kingdom of Babylon is recognized as one of the four great ancient civilizations with a history stretching back nearly 4,000, even 5,000 years. Its culture had a profound influence on human history. But how could such a glorious kingdom come to ruin? Ancient Babylon was located in the Mesopotamian plain, modern-day Iraq. Mesopotamia comes from ancient Greek, meaning the land between two rivers, the Euphrates and the Tigris. The final dynasty of Babylon, 626 BC, 539 BC, was the very one that destroyed the ancient kingdom of Judah. This event is mentioned repeatedly in the Bible, including in the Book of Revelation, where it recalls the siege of Jerusalem. The second king of this final dynasty, Nebuchadnezzar II, 634 BC, 562 BC, brought Babylon to the height of its power. The city of Babylon was fortified with double walls and surrounded by a massive moat fed by the Euphrates River. Under Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon became the most splendid and impregnable city of the Middle East, a major center for commerce and trade. The city's main roads were paved with white and rose-colored limestone. According to tradition, the city also contained the Tower of Babel, believed in Scripture to have offended the divine. The royal palace was magnificent, and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, were said to lie within its walls. Nebuchadnezzar, confident in his nation's might, launched many wars, ultimately destroying the kingdom of Judah and conquering the sacred city of Jerusalem. He plundered and razed the city and forced its inhabitants into slavery in Babylon. Many were humiliated and persecuted for their beliefs and customs. To the Jewish people, this was a time of great sorrow, now remembered as the Babylonian captivity. Though Babylon appeared prosperous, its morality was deeply corrupted. As the capital and economic hub of the ancient Middle East, its culture of decadence spread to surrounding nations and territories. Jewish prophets, though persecuted, continued to proclaim righteousness and truth, yet their words were rejected. One lamented, "We would have healed Babylon, but she is beyond remedy." The Bible recounts how Nebuchadnezzar built a giant golden statue and summoned all officials to attend its dedication. Everyone was forced to bow before it. Those who refused would be put to death. Many Jews who worshipped only Yahweh refused. In a fury, Nebuchadnezzar ordered them thrown into a fiery furnace. In 539 BC, during the reign of Nabonidus, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, the final days of Babylon arrived. Nabonidus had entrusted most royal affairs to his son Belshazzar. On the very night the Persian king Cyrus the Great approached Babylon, Belshazzar was indulging in feasting and wine. During this banquet, a mysterious finger appeared in midair and wrote a prophecy on the palace wall, warning of Babylon's downfall. Yet Belshazzar did not heed the warning. That very night, as the message of doom glowed on the wall. Cyrus's forces, strong and disciplined, took advantage of the discontent within Babylon's army. Without shedding a single drop of blood, Cyrus convinced Babylon's soldiers to surrender. Thus, the mighty Babylonian Empire came to a sudden end. In the years that followed, the once glorious city fell into ruin, perhaps as Scripture says, because of the sins that made her desolate forever. After his victory, Cyrus the Great treated the Jewish people with kindness. He ended their persecution, freed all captives, allowed them to return home, restored their property, and gave permission to rebuild the Jewish temple. The Persian Empire he established endured for over 200 years. To this day, Iranians honor Cyrus as the father of the nation. Babylon, once unbeatable, was ultimately destroyed. On the surface, it may seem Belshazzar's indulgence was to blame. But beneath that lies a deeper truth. The collapse came from moral decay, the contempt for faith, and the oppression of believers. In just 30 years, a kingdom that once dominated the world was brought low, conquered, without resistance. This story reminds us that no matter how powerful a government or institution may appear, when it persecutes righteousness and suppresses true faith, it ultimately faces divine judgment. By contrast, Cyrus the Great's protection of religious freedom earned him eternal honor. So Babylon fell not by sword or siege, but by pride, decay, and the refusal to heed divine warnings. When a kingdom turns its back on righteousness and truth, not even the strongest walls can hold. And yet, even in the darkest of hours, there were those chosen to carry the light. Not with armies or kingship, but with visions that transcended the earthly realm. Isaiah the prophet, who once warned his people before exile, left behind more than just earthly prophecies. He embarked on a soul's journey lifted by angels through the heavens, until he reached the seventh heaven, where the light of the Lord shines in eternal stillness. It was a revelation so sacred, it was hidden for centuries, preserved only in secret texts. Now we enter that sacred chapter in the Ethiopian Bible. The Ascension of Isaiah, when the prophet rose to the seventh heaven. After the fall of Babylon, after the hand had written its final prophecy on the wall, and silence spread over the ruins of an empire that had once believed itself eternal, the story returns to its spiritual axis, to the prophets, and to a moment unlike any other in Scripture, when a man of flesh and blood was lifted from the earth and passed through the heavens, guided by an angel, to witness the glory of realms no mortal was ever meant to see. This is the ascension of Isaiah. It begins with persecution. The prophet Isaiah, once trusted by kings, had become a threat to those who had fallen into corruption. The book tells us that King Manasseh, son of the righteous King Hezekiah, had turned his heart toward false gods, idol worship, and sorcery. The spiritual rot spread through Jerusalem like a sickness. And Isaiah, fearless in his calling, stood as a lone voice in the wilderness, rebuking the king's sins. For that he was condemned. In the early chapters of the Ascension text, Isaiah is told in secret by his disciple Habakkuk that his end is near. And yet, rather than fear death, Isaiah rejoices. Because before he is taken from this world, he is given a gift, the chance to see what lies beyond. An angel of the Lord descends radiant and mighty and says, "Come, Isaiah, you are to ascend through the seven heavens, and you will behold the secrets of eternity." What follows is not merely a vision, but a journey. Carried by the angel Isaiah, passes through the firmament, the first heaven, and rises higher. Each heaven reveals a layer of divine order. The second heaven, then the third, each filled with angelic hosts, singing praises, each layer more luminous than the one before. Yet at each stage, Isaiah is told not to speak. He is told to look, to listen, but not to reveal what he sees until the appointed time. The fourth heaven is where the division begins. Here Isaiah sees the rebellious angels who fell alongside Satan, bound in chains, mourning the glory they abandoned. They do not speak, but their presence is felt. And Isaiah is warned, Speak not to them, for their judgment is sealed. This moment, chilling profound, sets the stage for what Isaiah will see next. In the fifth heaven, Isaiah sees those who are faithful in life's souls, waiting in peace. And in the sixth, he meets archangels, the watchers, who record the deeds of men, the ones who witnessed the fall in the days of Noah, who saw the giants rise, and who carry the burden of memory for the world. They know Isaiah. They greet him with reverence, for they have read the scrolls of his life. Then comes the seventh heaven, and here words begin to fail. Isaiah is no longer merely traveling upward, he is entering the throne room of the Most High. A brilliance too pure for the human eye surrounds him, and the angel who brought him this far now bows, for none may stand in the presence of the Eternal One. There Isaiah beholds the Son, yes, the Son of the Most High, not yet born of Mary, but already present in heavenly form. He sees the moment of incarnation foretold before the world began. He sees how the Beloved will descend, passing through each heaven in silence, hiding his glory, becoming like a man, a child, born in poverty, unrecognized by kings, destined to suffer. And Isaiah weeps. He sees the crucifixion before it happens, the betrayal, the agony, the darkness at noon, the mocking voices. And yet, he also sees the resurrection, the light that breaks the tomb, the ascension not of Isaiah this time, but of the Christ himself, returning triumphant to the heavens he once left behind. The angel says to Isaiah, "This is the mystery you shall record, but not speak until your days are fulfilled. And when your soul departs, it shall return to this place, for you have seen the glory of God." Soon after this vision, Isaiah is captured by Manasseh's men. The prophet who had seen heaven is now bound by ropes, mocked, and brought before the king. His crime, refusing to renounce the Lord. And so, in a brutal and unforgettable scene, Isaiah is sawn in half by a wooden blade, but he does not cry out. His lips whisper praise. He dies as he lived, faithful, fearless, and full of light, and his soul rises once more. What makes the ascension of Isaiah so extraordinary is not just the vivid imagery or the cosmic scale of its vision. It is the fact that this book, once cherished by the early Christian church, was quietly set aside, excluded from the canonical Bible. Why? Perhaps because it reveals too much. It tells of the Son before the Gospels. It dares to describe the structure of heaven. It proclaims that the fall of angels is not myth, but memory. And most importantly, it shows that death is not the end. It's said that in the Ethiopian Bible, this text is not hidden in an appendix. It is honored, preserved, read aloud. There Isaiah's voice still echoes. Not just the voice of warning, but the voice of wonder. For those who believe that faith is only about rules and rituals, this book is a doorway. It opens onto a universe where prophets can fly angels, record every breath, and a carpenter's son walks through the layers of reality to redeem it all. And so, as we return from this vision of seven heavens, the question remains: if Isaiah was granted a glimpse of the eternal, what might we see if our hearts were just a little more open? Let us hold on to this truth, even in a world that forgets, that silences its prophets, that buries its holy books. Truth rises, just as Isaiah did, just as the Son did, just as we all might one day if we choose the path of light. The seven heavens and the 200 watchers, ancient Jewish cosmology unveiled. There is a vision that predates telescopes and space probes, a vision of the cosmos drawn not from science, but from revelation. It is a vision of heavens layered like veils, each one higher and more radiant than the last inhabited, not by planets and stars, but by angels, thrones, and secrets. In ancient Jewish mysticism, especially in the apocalyptic texts preserved in the Ethiopian Bible, the universe is not a cold vacuum, but a divine architecture, seven heavens stacked above the earth, and within them, orders of beings so powerful that some once dared to defy God himself. They are the watchers, the 200 angels who fell. To enter this worldview is to let go of modern cosmology and step into a sacred narrative where heaven is not metaphor, but structure mapped out by scribes, prophets, and mystics with trembling hands. The first heaven closest to earth is described as a place where the winds reside, where the clouds gather, where the storehouses of snow, hail, and rain are kept under divine command. This is the heaven we might imagine when looking up at a stormy sky or feeling a sudden gust of wind. It is both natural and mystical, a threshold between our world and something greater. Above that lies the second heaven, a darker realm. Here, the apocryphal texts tell of imprisoned angels, rebellious spirits bound in chains, awaiting judgment. It is a realm of stasis and punishment, a spiritual abyss above us, where the consequences of celestial rebellion still echo. This is where some say the fallen watchers were cast after their crimes. Their names, Semjaza Azazel, linger in forgotten books and whispered prayers blamed for bringing forbidden knowledge to earth. The third heaven, often described as paradise, is where righteous souls rest. It is a garden beyond gardens, lush and blooming, guarded by angels filled with peace. This realm is neither abstract nor distant. It was said to be visited by prophets like Isaiah and Enoch. In the Ascension of Isaiah, the prophet is led through the heavens, and the third is where he first sees the reward for the faithful, a land of incorruptible beauty where the soul finds rest. But above that, paradise are heavens more mysterious still. The fourth and fifth heavens are realms of vast angelic hosts, singing choirs, spheres of light, watchers of the stars, and keepers of divine law. The fourth heaven is ruled by angelic beings who regulate the seasons, track the sun and moon, and ensure the workings of cosmic time. They are the ones who hold the calendars of creation, the same ones that Uriel, the angel of wisdom, revealed to Enoch. Here the language of astronomy and prophecy merge. The sun does not simply rise and set. It has guided its paths, watched its energy consecrated. The fifth heaven, on the other hand, is the domain of penitent angels, those who rebelled but did not fall entirely. They stand in sorrowful silence, heads bowed, wings dimmed, awaiting divine mercy. These are the watchers who hesitated, the ones who did not descend to earth, but still carried guilt in their hearts. Their weeping echoes across the sky, a hymn of regret in a realm that once shimmered with pride. And then there is the sixth heaven, where angelic scribes dwell. They are the recorders of the universe, documenting the deeds of men, the rise and fall of nations, and even the thoughts of hearts. It is said that every moment, every decision is written down here. This is not just metaphor, it is sacred surveillance, divine observation. The idea that nothing is forgotten, that history itself is a living scroll. Finally, the seventh heaven, the highest, the holiest. It is the throne room of God, a place of unimaginable brilliance, where seraphim cry out day and night, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." Here time collapses, language fails, even the angels cover their faces in awe. Only a few, like Enoch, are said to have seen it and returned. In this realm, God speaks, and the vibrations of that speech ripple down through all creation. And yet woven into this divine cosmos is a story of rebellion of angels who fell not because they hated God, but because they loved mankind too much or in the wrong way. The 200 watchers, as told in the Book of Enoch, were sent to earth to watch over humanity. But they saw the daughters of men, and they desired them. So they made a pact. They descended to Mount Hermon, each swearing not to abandon the plan. "Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men," they said. And with that, the heavens cracked. They taught mankind forbidden knowledge of metalwork, enchantments, astrology, seduction. They blurred the line between the divine and the mortal. Their union with human women produced the Nephilim giants, monstrous and powerful. The world grew violent, corrupted, and so came the flood. But the story did not end there. Some of the watchers were bound in the second heaven, Others were scattered. Their children, the Nephilim, were destroyed. Yet their spirits unclean. Spirits remained on earth. According to Enoch, they became the wandering demons that whisper in human minds, even now. What are we to make of this vision, 7 heavens, each more radiant or dreadful than the last? Angels both faithful and fallen. A cosmos alive with intention, with judgment, with love and wrath. To the ancient scribes, this was not just mythology. It was the truth behind the veil. A cosmology not of stars and matter, but of morality and meaning. A universe where every level reflects a choice: obedience or rebellion, humility or pride. And if you close your eyes tonight, perhaps you can imagine it, the winds of the first heaven brushing your skin. The sorrow of the 5th heaven echoing in your dreams. The brilliance of the 7th heaven beyond imagining. And somewhere in between, the watchers still watching, reminding us that knowledge without wisdom can lead even angels to fall. Let this story lull you, not just into sleep, but into wonder. For the universe may be far stranger and far holier than we've ever dared to believe. The tree of life and the crystal garden, the lost Eden, hidden in the heavens. What if Eden never vanished? Not just a memory or a myth, but a real vibrant garden, still alive, still blooming somewhere beyond the edge of our perception. According to the apocalyptic visions preserved in ancient Ethiopian scriptures, paradise was never truly lost. It was lifted, hidden, guarded. And somewhere within the layers of the 7 heavens, Eden still waits untouched by time. In the Book of Enoch, and even more vividly in the Ascension of Isaiah, Eden is not a distant past, but a present realm. It is described not as a forest or a field, but as a radiant sanctuary more crystalline than green, more celestial than earthy. This is the garden above all gardens. And at its heart stands the tree of life. Imagine this: a tree whose roots drink from eternity, whose leaves shimmer with healing light. A tree that doesn't just nourish the body, but restores the soul. Its fruit, according to the vision, glows with a color no human language can name. To eat of it is not simply to be filled, but to be transformed. And the garden surrounding it, oh, the garden is unlike any earthly paradise. In some Ethiopian texts, this divine garden is paved with luminous stones, sapphire paths, emerald waters, topaz flowers that sing as they bloom. The air is not just scented, it is sacred. It pulses with the breath of God. Angels walk here not in duty, but in joy, tending the trees, singing hymns older than time. And in this place, there is no death, no decay, no sorrow. This is the Eden that was lifted after the fall. Hidden not on earth, but in the 3rd heaven, a realm accessible only by divine permission. It is said that righteous souls glimpse it after death. That prophets like Enoch and Isaiah were allowed to walk its paths briefly. And when they returned, their faces glowed not with sunlight, but with the echo of something far more holy. But what about the flaming sword? The cherubim who guard the gate. According to this tradition, those guardians remain, but not at a garden on earth. They stand now at the edge of dimensions, at the veil between worlds. Their eyes see through time. Their swords shimmer with justice, not vengeance. They do not hate humankind. They protect what is sacred, waiting for a day when the tree of life might be offered again. In some visions, the tree itself stretches between realms. Its roots still buried in the soil of Eden, but its branches reaching all the way to the highest heaven. A cosmic ladder of sorts linking mortality and divinity. Perhaps this is why some mystics say every act of kindness shakes its leaves. That prayer, true prayer, rings through its bark like a song. And yet the image of Eden in these texts is not just about reward. It is a reminder, a whisper, that creation itself was once perfect and might be again. that paradise is not only behind us, but ahead of us. And that the greatest mystery of all is not that we were banished, but that the gate was never fully closed. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, let this vision take root in your imagination. Picture the garden not as lost but lifted. Feel the cool wind of the heavenly orchard brushing past veils of light. Hear the hum of the crystal petals opening in silence, and see far off at the heart of it all, the tree of life pulsing like a star, waiting for the day it will welcome us home again. Sleep well. Eden may be closer than you think. The Book of Adam and Eve. The Forgotten Truths after Eden. Long after the gates of Eden had closed and the echo of divine footsteps faded into the wind, Adam and Eve stood alone, not only cast from paradise, but cast into a world that seemed utterly alien. What followed was not simply the beginning of human history, but a long, aching grief. A grief not for what was lost physically, but for what was lost spiritually. The Book of Adam and Eve, sometimes referred to as the conflict of Adam and Eve, with Satan, is one of the most moving and obscure apocryphal texts ever preserved. It exists in fragments across languages like Ge'ez, Coptic Arabic, and Syriac, and yet it is almost completely forgotten in Western traditions. In the Ethiopian Bible, however, it continues to be read and revered. Unlike the brief and almost clinical summary in Genesis, this book lingers in the emotions, in the agony, in the longing. According to this account, the expulsion from Eden was not a swift end, but the beginning of a deep spiritual battle. Adam and Eve were not merely told to leave. They were plunged into a dark, wild, and unfamiliar world. The earth was cold, and the light of heaven no longer shone. The moment they stepped outside paradise, their bodies began to change. They felt hunger for the first time. They felt fear. And most of all, they felt separation from God. The book opens with Adam and Eve crying bitterly beside the gates of Eden, not yet understanding what had happened to them. They fast for days, refusing to eat, hoping that perhaps God would see their suffering and open the gates once more. But heaven remains silent. The soil they now stand on is hard and sharp, the water bitter. Even the sun, too bright for their now mortal eyes, feels like punishment. But the most haunting presence in this post-Eden world is not the cold or the hunger. It is Satan. This text tells us that Satan, in a jealous rage, vows to torment the couple until their death. He disguises himself repeatedly to deceive them, appearing as an angel, as a man of light, as an echo of what they once knew. He lies, he tempts, and he accuses. Adam and Eve, having never experienced deceit, fall again and again, each time with great remorse. At one point, Satan leads them to a high mountain and tells them to jump, claiming that God had asked it. Adam, still filled with childlike trust, almost obeys. But Eve pleads with him not to. Moments later, Satan vanishes laughing. Again and again, their hearts are broken, not just by exile, but by betrayal. And yet, their faith is never fully extinguished. Even when they fall, they turn to God. They pray, they cry, they wait. The book is not just a record of temptation, but of transformation. Adam, once a being of light, now becomes the first man to till the earth, to bleed from his hands, as he learns what labor is. Eve, once walking among angels, now becomes the first to give birth in pain. Their children Cain and Abel bring not only new life, but new tragedy. And through it all, they speak constantly to God, not with the confidence of Eden, but with the yearning of those who know what was lost. One of the most striking scenes in this text is when Adam, unable to bear the pain of separation, decides to throw himself into a river to die. But the water rejects him, lifting him back onto shore. He prays broken, begging for forgiveness, and a voice answers not with anger, but with quiet sorrow. God does not forget them. He watches, he mourns, and slowly he begins to teach. The book suggests that the exile was not a punishment alone, but a path of learning. Adam is taught to pray. Eve is taught to nourish life. They are given tools to survive and laws to live by. They are not cast off, but reshaped. Their long wandering becomes the seed of all spiritual awakening. In later chapters, we learn about their descent into the Cave of Treasures, a dark and mysterious chamber they call home. There, Adam hides the remains of precious items from Eden incense, gold, myrrh. These are later said to be passed down, generation by generation, until they appear again in the hands of the Magi at the birth of Christ. In this way, even in exile, Adam carries something holy. Something of Eden endures. One of the most tender parts of the book comes near the end of Adam's life. Sensing his time has come, Adam calls Eve and their children together. He recounts their story not as one of loss, but as one of hope. He speaks of a time when one will come to redeem them all. He tells them not to despair. Eve too reflects on her journey, not only as the first woman, but as the first mother, the first mourner, the first to taste both love and sorrow. She weeps not just for her own mistakes, but for all who would follow. And so they die, not cursed, but blessed, buried near the entrance to Eden, the very place where angels still guard the way, back flaming swords in hand. In their story lies the pattern of every human heart to fall, to weep, to long, and to hope. Why then was this story excluded from the canonical Bible? Some scholars argue that it was too mystical, too emotional, too filled with visions and supernatural battles. Others believe it offered too much sympathy, too much humanity for figures traditionally seen only in black and white. And yet, in the Ethiopian tradition, it is precisely this humanity that makes the book sacred. For it tells us that we are not alone in our exile, that the first to suffer were not perfect saints, but fragile beings like us. Tonight, as we reflect on this ancient account, we are invited to see Adam and Eve not just as names in a genealogy, but as real souls, struggling, praying, enduring. And through their story, perhaps we too find the courage to face our own wilderness. And if you drift off in the middle of this telling, that's perfectly fine. Because sometimes the truths we need most do not come in waking hours, but in dreams. And in that quiet space between sleep and silence, the story of Eden's children continues to unfold, waiting for hearts soft enough to hear. The deceitful serpent, who truly tempted Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. We've all heard the story. Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, broke the one divine commandment, and were cast out of Eden. But is the tale really so simple? Or was there a deeper, more sinister scheme behind it all? It all began not with Adam or Eve, but with a serpent. Yet this was no ordinary creature. The serpent was in fact the embodiment of a far older and far more dangerous force, Satan. According to ancient texts and religious traditions, Satan was not always the prince of darkness. Once he had a name of light, Lucifer. He was one of the 3 archangels created by God, known as the morning star. Brilliant in beauty and wisdom, God loved him deeply, entrusting him with great responsibility in the heavenly order. But that love and power gave birth to pride. Lucifer began to believe he was equal to God. Envy festered in his heart, and a lust for supreme authority overtook him. He no longer wished to serve, he wished to reign, and so he rebelled. Lucifer gathered a host of angels to rise against the Creator. What followed was a celestial war, heaven versus hell. In the end, Lucifer was defeated and cast out of heaven, thrown down into the abyss, now known as the underworld. From that moment forward, he was no longer Lucifer, the morning star, but Satan, the adversary, burning with hatred and vengeance. Satan could not bear to see God's love bestowed upon humanity. He despised Adam and Eve, who were given paradise joy and divine favor. So he devised a plan. He disguised himself as a serpent, cunning, graceful, persuasive. Approaching Eve, he whispered promises too tempting to ignore. "If you eat this fruit, you will not die. You will become like God, knowing both good and evil." Eve, drawn in by curiosity and the serpent's smooth words, reached for the fruit. She took a bite. But she didn't stop there. She offered it to Adam as well. That single act changed the course of human history. God, who sees all, was grieved not by their disobedience alone, but by how easily innocence had been manipulated. Yet consequences had been set in motion. Adam and Eve were exiled from Eden, sent down to a barren earth wild, untamed, without shelter or comfort. They would now have to work, struggle, and suffer. The man would labor endlessly to till the ground. The woman would endure the pain of childbirth. And both would face sickness, sorrow, and eventually death. From that moment on, paradise was lost, and behind it all stood a serpent, once a radiant angel, now the embodiment of pride and rebellion. Thus began the human story. Not in a perfect garden, but in a broken world. Not with divine knowledge, but with a dangerous awareness of sin. And in the shadows of that story still lingers the voice of the serpent, ever whispering, ever watching. The Apocalypse of Abraham, witnessing heaven and hell with his own eyes. There exists an ancient text rarely taught in churches, omitted from canonical Bibles. Yet it contains one of the most mysterious journeys ever recorded. It is the Apocalypse of Abraham. This is not the Abraham we often hear of, the patriarch promised descendants as numerous as the stars. This is Abraham, the spiritual pilgrim, taken by God into the highest realms of heaven to behold paradise judgment and the hidden architecture of the universe itself. Preserved within Jewish mystical traditions, and especially the Slavonic Apocrypha, this text dates back to the 1st to 3rd centuries AD. It recounts an extraordinary experience, a moment when Abraham was granted passage beyond the physical world into the divine realms of ultimate truth. It begins while Abraham is still among idol worshippers, surrounded by carved statues and empty rituals. Just as in the Bible, he questions the lifeless wooden gods of his father and dares to destroy them in pursuit of an unseen yet almighty creator. And then, God responds. A shining being called Yahuel, radiant and powerful, a pure embodiment of the divine word, appears to Abraham and tells him to prepare. Not for a journey across earthly lands, but for an ascent through the heavens. And so the journey begins. Yahuel leads Abraham upward beyond earth's skies, past mystical gates where light and shadow part ways. At each level of heaven, Abraham witnesses visions beyond mortal comprehension. Choirs of angels, singing souls awaiting judgment. Cosmic ledgers of every human deed and spiraling rays of light described as wheels of wisdom, spinning in endless space. But God does not show Abraham only the light. He reveals the other side, the world of darkness. Not the fire and brimstone version of later traditions, but something far more haunting. Here Abraham sees souls defiled, not through torture, but through their own choices. Souls that once knew the light, yet chose arrogance, deceit, and cruelty. Their punishment is not pain, but separation. Eternal isolation from the divine presence. That absence of love, that infinite loneliness, is the true hell. Then comes the most terrifying vision. Abraham beholds a monstrous being. A three-headed dragon, part beast, part human, fire and ice, entwined, a symbol of the powers that have manipulated humanity from the beginning. Yahuel names it Azazel, the fallen angel, the tempter, the spirit of chaos unleashed through greed and domination. Azazel doesn't dwell only in the lower realms. He exists in human hearts, in betrayal, in lies, in insatiable ambition. But Abraham is not called to destroy him. He is the witness, the one who must carry this vision back to earth to warn generations to come. After this, Abraham ascends even further to the highest heaven, where light no longer has form and words lose meaning. There he hears the voice. Unlike any sound ever heard in the cosmos, it is the voice of the eternal, unbound by time unshaped by space. God speaks to Abraham about the cycles of ages of kingdoms that will rise and fall, of peoples who will stray and awaken. And he speaks of one who is to come, a son of light, who will lead humanity back to its original radiance. The heaven Abraham sees is not a peaceful garden, it is a vast living cosmos, layered and trembling with the tension between light and shadow, order and chaos. Hell is not burning torment, but the closed-off spaces of the universe, where souls cannot return, where they are forgotten by all. And Abraham, once a man among idol worshippers, becomes the chosen one to carry this new vision of God, not only all-powerful, but also infinitely merciful. Radiant in glory, yet just in judgment. This apocalypse is not a spectacle to behold. It is a mirror for the soul. Which of the 7 heavens are we living in? Is our spirit rising toward the light, or drifting quietly away from where God awaits? And if tonight, as you drift into sleep, you dream of stairways made of light, of angels singing, of souls journeying through eternity, then remember, perhaps Abraham dreamed so too. But when he awoke, he carried that vision, so we might hear it even now. The Book of Giants. The lost prophecies of the Nephilim. Long before the floodwaters swept the earth, and long before the memory of mankind faded into scattered myth, there was a war. Not a war of swords or empires, but a war of bloodlines, of rebellion, and of knowledge forbidden. At the heart of that forgotten age stood the giants, the monstrous offspring of the Watchers, and human women doomed from the beginning, yet desperate to survive. Their story is whispered not in the pages of most Bibles, but in fragments of a vanished scripture, known only to a few as the Book of Giants. This mysterious text is often regarded as a lost chapter of the Book of Enoch. It was once kept alive by the Essenes, a Jewish sect who fled to the cliffs of Qumran near the Dead Sea. Hidden in jars buried in caves, their scrolls remained untouched for 2,000 years until the 20th century, when archaeologists unearthed them and found pieces of a story the world had almost forgotten. The Book of Giants begins not in heaven nor on earth, but in the shadows between. It tells of the Nephilim giants, who were born when 200 rebellious angels, known as the Watchers, descended to earth and took mortal wives. These children, titanic in stature and unruly in spirit, quickly turned the world into a place of violence, domination, and sorrow. They devoured everything in their path, beasts, crops, and even men. Blood stained the soil of the early world, and the cries of the innocent reached heaven. But within the chaos, something stranger emerged. The giants began to dream. According to the text, the Nephilim were plagued by terrifying visions, prophetic nightmares that showed the end of their kind. One giant named Mahaway is said to have flown across the earth and sky to seek answers. He traveled to speak with Enoch, the one human who walked with God and did not die. In their encounter, Enoch reveals to Mahaway that a great flood will soon come, not just to cleanse the earth, but to erase the legacy of the Watchers and their offspring. This moment is one of the most tragic in all apocryphal literature, for the giants, despite their violence and pride, seem aware of their doom. They send messages to heaven. They plead for forgiveness. Some even fast and pray, hoping they might be spared. But the decree has been sealed. Their destiny is to vanish, washed away by waters they cannot hold back. And so, the Book of Giants becomes more than a tale of monsters. It becomes a chronicle of despair. A record of beings who knew they were born from a breach in cosmic law, yet still longed for redemption. The fragments recovered at Qumran speak of battles between giants, arguments over their fate, and visions of angels descending with flaming swords. The names of these giants, Ohia, Hahia, Gilgamesh, Mahaway, echo like ghosts through time. Each one a hybrid of divine power and human fragility. Each one a symbol of what happens when boundaries between heaven and earth are broken. But the most haunting part? The text ends abruptly. No complete version of the Book of Giants has survived. What we have are fragments, sentences that trail off names without endings, prophecies without closure. Some scholars believe this was no accident, that perhaps like the giants themselves, the book was meant to be lost. Others believe that the knowledge it contained about forbidden unions, about celestial rebellion, about the true nature of pre-flood humanity, was simply too dangerous to preserve, and yet the echoes remain. In the book of Genesis, we're told almost in passing that the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and took them as wives, that there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. But Genesis says little more. It's the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants that fill in the gaps, at least what survives of them. So why was this story erased? Why did the early church choose to canonize Genesis but cast aside the texts that name the Nephilim, the Watchers, and the dreams of giants? Perhaps because these texts ask difficult questions. They blur the lines between angels and men, between myth and memory. They suggest a world far more complex than the sanitized version often taught. A world where divine beings walked among mortals, where hybrid creatures mourned their fate, and where even monsters could cry out to heaven. Tonight, as you close your eyes and drift into sleep, imagine the ancient deserts of Qumran. Picture a scroll sealed in clay, resting in silence for thousands of years. Picture Mahaway, the flying giant, soaring through the skies, seeking answers from the last man who remembered the light. And ask yourself, what else was lost when the giants fell? Perhaps the real danger was not in their size, but in the truths they carried. And if in the quiet of your dreams, you find yourself standing at the edge of a flood, just know you're not alone. Somewhere in the dust of forgotten history, the Book of Giants is still whispering. And tonight, maybe it's whispering to you. The Kebra Nagast, the hidden sacred history of Ethiopia. There exists a book ancient, revered, and almost entirely unknown to the Western world. A book that claims to contain not only the royal lineage of Ethiopia, but also the secret continuation of a divine covenant. Its name is the Kebra Nagast, meaning the glory of kings. And though few have heard of it, those who do call it one of the most sacred texts in all of Africa. Far from a mere legend, the Kebra Nagast is the national epic of Ethiopia. An intricate weaving of biblical history, Solomonic legacy, and spiritual destiny. Believed to have been compiled in the 14th century from far older traditions, it holds the bold and astonishing claim that the kings of Ethiopia descend directly from King Solomon of Israel and the Queen of Sheba. But this is not just about bloodlines. It is a story of divine promise. According to the Kebra Nagast, when the Queen of Sheba traveled to Jerusalem, she was not only seeking wisdom, she was fulfilling prophecy. There she met Solomon, whose wisdom dazzled the known world. But beneath their encounter lay something deeper, the merging of two worlds. Their union gave birth to a son, Menelik I, who would later become the first emperor of Ethiopia. As Menelik grew, he journeyed to meet his father in Jerusalem. Solomon, overjoyed, wished him to remain and one day inherit the throne. But Menelik, guided by visions and divine command, returned to Ethiopia. And he did not return empty-handed, for he carried with him, as told in the Kebra Nagast, the Ark of the Covenant. Yes, that ark, the sacred chest, said to contain the tablets of the Ten Commandments, the very presence of God among the Israelites. According to Ethiopian tradition, it was taken not by theft, but by divine will. Solomon, through prophecy, accepted this destiny. And so the ark departed not westward, but south to Ethiopia, where it remains hidden to this day in the holy city of Aksum, guarded by monks who have sworn lifelong secrecy. This single claim transforms the Kebra Nagast from royal myth to theological revolution. For if true, it would mean that the divine covenant did not vanish with the destruction of Jerusalem's temple, but continued preserved quietly in Africa, away from empire and conquest, untouched by the centuries of division that fractured other faiths. And yet few in the Western world have read this book. For centuries, the Kebra Nagast was dismissed as a local curiosity, too African, too bold, too outside the accepted canon. But in Ethiopia, It was and still is a cornerstone of identity. Not just for kings and priests, but for ordinary people. It tells them, you are descended from Solomon. You are part of God's unfolding story. The book weaves together tales of angels, wisdom, betrayal, and divine justice. It casts the Queen of Sheba not as a mere visitor, but as a vessel of destiny. It paints Solomon not just as a king, but as a spiritual architect whose legacy echoes far beyond Israel's borders. And it presents Ethiopia not as a footnote to Christian history, but as a hidden pillar. One of the most poetic moments in the Kebra Nagast is when the ark is placed upon Ethiopian soil. The angels sing. The mountains rejoice. A voice from heaven says, "From here my glory shall not depart." A divine affirmation that God's presence would dwell among a people forgotten by empire, yet chosen by eternity. The book also foretells a time of testing, that Ethiopia will suffer invasions, trials, and betrayals, that the ark may one day be hidden so deeply, even the faithful forget its exact place. But the covenant will remain, and when the world begins to forget its roots, Ethiopia will rise to remind it. So why was this story hidden? Why was the Kebra Nagast never taught alongside other biblical history? Perhaps because it shifts the center. Because it tells a story where Africa is not the mission field, but the sanctuary. Where black kings and queens are not converted, but chosen. Where sacredness is not imported, but inherited. Tonight as you listen, let your mind drift through the mountains of Aksum. Picture a hidden temple guarded by a single monk who has not left its walls in decades. Picture a chest covered in gold wrapped in linen, resting in eternal silence. And perhaps within that silence, there still echoes the voice of Solomon, the wisdom of Sheba, the promise of a covenant never broken. And if in your dreams you hear the sound of ancient horns or the whisper of pages written in Ge'ez, the sacred tongue of Ethiopia, know this. You are hearing the Kebra Nagast, not just a book, but a living breath of history. A flame that was never extinguished. A secret waiting patiently for the world to remember. Ark of the Covenant is the sacred chest truly in Ethiopia. Beneath the burning sun of northern Ethiopia, in the ancient city of Aksum, there stands a modest stone chapel. It is small, quiet, unassuming. Yet inside it is said to contain one of the most powerful and mysterious artifacts in all of human history, the Ark of the Covenant. The very ark said to have held the tablets of the Ten Commandments. The ark that parted rivers, brought cities to ruin, and was once so sacred that touching it meant instant death. Could it really be here far from Jerusalem, hidden away in a forgotten corner of Africa? According to Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, the answer is a solemn and unwavering yes. This belief is not merely folklore or rumor. It is a cornerstone of Ethiopian identity, echoed in ancient texts like the Kebra Nagast, and protected with reverence for over 2,000 years. The chapel known as the Church of Our Lady Mary of Zion is fiercely guarded day and night. Only one man is allowed inside, a monk known as the Guardian of the Ark. He takes a sacred vow of lifelong solitude and never leaves the chapel grounds again, devoting his life to prayer and protection of what lies within. No one else is permitted to see it. No foreign scholar, no government official, no pope, no king. And yet, the belief persists. Visitors to Aksum speak of a deep and almost tangible spiritual presence surrounding the chapel. The monks whisper of miracles. The city honors it as a holy center. And every year during the festival of Timket, a replica of the ark called a Tobit is carried in elaborate procession drenched in incense and song. The real one, they say, never leaves its resting place. But how did it get here? As we heard in the Kebra Nagast, the story goes back to King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Their son Menelik being returned to Ethiopia from Jerusalem, carrying the ark not by theft, but by divine plan. Solomon, guided by prophecy, allowed it. The ark was meant to leave the temple before its future destruction. And in Ethiopia, it found sanctuary. For skeptics, the lack of physical access to the artifact raises questions. No modern scientist has ever verified its existence. There are no photographs, no carbon dating, no public records, and yet there are clues. Historians note that many Ethiopian churches contain replicas of the Ark, and these tabots are treated with extreme reverence, each believed to be connected spiritually or symbolically to the original. Some researchers point to medieval records, even Islamic accounts, that describe the Ark's presence in Aksum centuries ago. Others note the sheer consistency of Ethiopian oral tradition, passed down through generations without break. And then there are the prophecies. Some ancient texts, including parts of Enoch and the Dead Sea Scrolls, hint at the Ark's mysterious disappearance and future revelation. That it would be hidden in a land far away, preserved by a righteous people, and revealed only at the appointed time. Could that time be now? In an age of disconnection, perhaps the Ark remains hidden not because it is lost, but because we have forgotten what it means. The Ark was never just a container. It was a covenant, a symbol of humanity's relationship with the divine. It radiated presence, not power, reverence, not spectacle. If it does lie in Ethiopia, then perhaps its true purpose is not to be displayed in a museum or dissected in a lab. Perhaps it remains hidden because it still speaks, not with thunder or flame, but with silence. A silence that humbles, that invites awe, that reminds us of a promise still alive. So tonight, as your thoughts drift between stars and scripture, imagine that small stone chapel. Imagine a solitary monk kneeling in the darkness, whispering prayers passed down through generations. Imagine behind him a relic wrapped in cloth, heavy with the weight of history. And ask yourself, if the Ark is real, what would you do if you saw it? Would you reach out and touch? Or would you simply kneel and listen? Because some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only remembered. Queen of Sheba, the woman honored in both the Bible and the Qur'an. Long before the rise of empires and the fall of kingdoms, there was a woman whose name still echoes through the holiest of books. A queen both mysterious and majestic. She appears in the Bible, she is revered in the Qur'an, and she is beloved in Ethiopian legend. Her name was the Queen of Sheba, but who was she really? In the Book of Kings, we are told that the Queen of Sheba traveled from a faraway land to meet King Solomon, drawn by tales of his wisdom and the glory of his court. She brought with her camels laden with gold, spices, and precious stones, offerings not just of wealth, but of respect. Their meeting was not one of conflict, but of curiosity. She tested Solomon with riddles, and he answered them all. And in return, he showed her the grandeur of his palace, the offerings of the temple, and the depth of a mind gifted by God. The Bible does not say much more, but the story did not end there. In the Qur'an, she is known as Bilqis, an intelligent, powerful ruler who governed her people with grace. When she received Solomon's message, she did not respond with pride or defiance. She sought counsel, weighed her options, and chose peace. When she finally stood before Solomon, she declared her belief in the one true God. Her journey was not just diplomatic, it was spiritual, but it is in Ethiopian tradition where her story becomes most vivid. According to the Kebra Nagast, the Queen of Sheba's kingdom was in ancient Ethiopia, and her name was Makeda. She did not just visit Solomon, she bore him a son. His name was Menelik, and from him began the Solomonic dynasty that ruled Ethiopia for nearly 3,000 years. A bloodline said to descend directly from the wisest king in Israel and the queen who sought him out. Makeda returned to her homeland carrying more than gifts. She carried knowledge, wisdom, and a sacred legacy. It is said that when Menelik came of age, he journeyed to Jerusalem to meet his father. Solomon welcomed him, and before he left, Menelik, either by destiny or design, brought something extraordinary back with him, the Ark of the Covenant. And so, in the heart of Ethiopia, the Queen of Sheba became more than a monarch. She became the matriarch of a divine legacy. Her blood, they say, carried the wisdom of Solomon and the blessing of God. But beyond legends and bloodlines, there is something even more enduring about her story. She is one of the few women honored by name in both the Bible and the Qur'an. She is praised not for war, but for wisdom, not for beauty, but for curiosity. She did not conquer, she questioned. She did not demand, she sought. And for that, she became immortal in the memories of nations. Tonight, as you lie back and let your thoughts wander, imagine the Queen of Sheba's journey across endless deserts, through scorching sun and starlit nights, accompanied by camel scribes and the hush of something sacred, not knowing what she would find, but knowing she had to go, seeking not power, but truth. And when she found it, she did not hoard it. She carried it home. So perhaps, in some quiet way, we are all like the Queen of Sheba travelers through questions, pilgrims of the soul. And perhaps like her, the greatest wisdom we'll ever gain will come when we're brave enough to seek it, even if the journey takes us far from home. The punishment of the wisest king in history. Solomon's fall from grace. Before the crown, before the gold, before the throne that gleamed under the sun, there was a boy. Solomon was not born to rule in glory. He was the son of David, a king of war born from a union once stained by scandal and sorrow. And yet, it was this child that God chose. Not the strongest, not the oldest, but the one who even in youth whispered prayers at dawn. When he became king, he did not ask for power or wealth or vengeance. He asked for wisdom to discern between good and evil, to rule justly over his people. And so the heavens opened. God poured into Solomon a wisdom so vast, so radiant, that even the angels took pause. He saw through lies. He understood the nature of things. He could name every plant, speak with animals, and judge with terrifying clarity. Kings and queens traveled across deserts just to ask him questions. And when he answered, it was as though the stars themselves had spoken. God was pleased. He gave Solomon not only wisdom, but riches and peace treasures the boy had not asked for. The kingdom of Israel grew greater than any before it. Under Solomon's rule, silver was as common as stones, and the temple of the Lord rose in blinding beauty, adorned with cedar from Lebanon and gold from Ophir. And yet, it is often when we are richest that we forget where we came from. As Solomon's palace expanded, so did his heart toward women, toward alliances, toward gods he once denounced. He married daughters of foreign kings, 700 wives and 300 concubines. And though each union was political, with each new queen came a new altar. Small at first, hidden in gardens, quiet in the hills. But slowly, their fires rose higher. The man who once fell on his knees before the Ark of the Covenant now walked through courtyards lined with idols. He still spoke the name of the Lord, but only among certain guests. His wisdom, once a flame that lit the world, began to flicker, and God watched in silence, the same silence that follows a broken promise. Some texts say Solomon tried to justify himself, that he built the temple first, that he still remembered the commandments. But obedience is not a balance sheet. Faith is not something we negotiate. And so the consequences came not with thunder or wrath, but with distance. The divine voice that once visited him in dreams was gone. His thoughts grew clouded. The peace in his kingdom cracked. Enemies rose on every side. Even his closest officials began to turn. Then comes the tale that few speak of. According to ancient legends, Solomon's fall was more than spiritual. It was tangible. One morning, as he rose to judge his people, a strange figure appeared in the court. It was Asmodeus, a prince of demons, cunning and cold. He had disguised himself, slipped past the guards, and with trickery stole the ring, the seal by which Solomon commanded spirits and jinn. Without it, Solomon lost everything. His appearance changed. His servants did not recognize him. They cast him out as an impostor. And so the king who once rode a flying throne was now a wanderer, barefoot, nameless, forgotten. He begged for food. He slept under trees. No one believed his story, and perhaps even he began to doubt. He traveled far. Some say he crossed deserts, others that he sailed alone. But wherever he went, he carried only one thing: regret. Not for his fall from wealth, but for breaking the trust of the one who had given him everything. Years passed, until one day, as he sat beside a river, a fish leapt from the water and fell into his lap. Inside it, gleaming like a memory, was the ring, the very ring that once bore the name of God. Solomon wept, not with triumph, but with repentance. He returned to Jerusalem, quietly, with no fanfare. He reclaimed his throne. But he ruled differently. There were no more feasts, no more peacocks from Tarshish or ships of silver. Just a king who sat in silence writing proverbs and looking eastward, waiting for sunrise. And when he died, the people mourned. For the man they remembered had once touched heaven. But in secret scrolls in forgotten books, the full tale is told not just of glory, but of warning. That even the wisest man, beloved by God, fell when he no longer guarded his heart. That the greatest blessings can become the seeds of our undoing if we forget where they came from. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, think of Solomon not just as a king, but as a mirror. A soul like ours, torn between light and shadow. And remember, wisdom is not something we are given. Once it is something we must choose again and again, even in silence, even in exile, even in dreams. And yet the echoes of Solomon did not end with his death. Far beyond the sands of Jerusalem, his legend traveled with time, carried on the breath of exiles and pilgrims, until it found root in the highlands of Ethiopia. There among the clouds and mountains, another miracle quietly unfolded. Lalibela, the city touched by angels. In the heart of northern Ethiopia, nestled high within the Lasta Mountains, lies a city that seems carved not by human hands, but by something divine. 11 monolithic churches sculpted downward into the red volcanic rock stand, connected by winding tunnels, hidden courtyards, and shadowed passageways. This place is Lalibela, named after the king who dreamed it, and perhaps after the angels who built it. Lalibela was born into royalty during a turbulent time. His birth, they say, was foretold. Bees swarmed his cradle, yet did not sting. His mother declared that the child was blessed, that he would one day recreate a new Jerusalem, not in the desert of the Holy Land, but in the highlands of Africa. And so, when Jerusalem fell into the hands of foreign powers, and Christian pilgrims could no longer make the journey, King Lalibela declared, "Then we shall bring Jerusalem here." What followed can only be described as impossible. Within just 24 years, an entire complex of 11 interconnected churches appeared. Not built from stone blocks stacked on one another, but carved directly into the earth from the top down. That's right, the churches were sculpted like statues in reverse. No bricks, no scaffolding. Only hammer and chisel cutting through solid rock with eerie precision. How could such a feat be achieved? Local tradition holds a different answer. They say that during the day, King Lalibela and his workers would labor shaping the stone as best they could. But at night, when the human hands fell into sleep, angels descended. Heavenly beings unseen and tireless took over the work. And in the silence of darkness, the rock melted beneath their divine touch. These weren't just churches, they were a sacred map. The layout of Lalibela mirrors the holy city of Jerusalem, complete with a Jordan River carved into the mountain, flowing between the eastern and western clusters of sanctuaries. Each church bears its own mystery. Beit Medhana Alem, the largest monolithic church in the world, stands like a fortress of prayer supported by 72 columns echoing the elders of Revelation. Beit Georgis, the Church of St. George, shaped like a perfect Greek cross, is perhaps the most iconic. From above it glows golden orange, rising like a symbol from another world. From below it is pure silence. Even today, no one fully understands how they did it. Some say it was divine geometry. Others claim ancient tools lost to time. A few whisper of ark-guided builders, descendants of Solomon's own artisans, returning to complete their ancestors' legacy. But no one argues this. Lalibela does not feel like it was built. It feels like it was revealed. Walk through its passages, and you won't feel stone. You'll feel time softening. Step into its shadowed courtyards, and you may hear nothing but your own breath. Or perhaps the echo of prayers spoken 1,000 years ago. Monks still live here. Candles still burn. The walls still breathe the scent of incense, of myrrh, of faith, deeper than reason. And every year, thousands of pilgrims journey barefoot, some for days, just to press their hands against these sacred stones. Not because they want to see the past, but because they believe it never left. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy, imagine walking those hidden corridors under starlight, where heaven once touched earth, and maybe still does. Mont Saint-Michel, where heaven touched earth. There is an island that rises like a dream from the shifting tides of Normandy, France. Its spire piercing the clouds, its reflection dancing on the silver waters below. To those who approach from the vast tidal flats, it seems almost otherworldly. And perhaps it truly is. This is Mont Saint-Michel, a sacred place said to have been touched by the hand of an archangel. According to a legend passed down for over 1,000 years, the story begins in the year 708 AD. At that time, Aubert, the bishop of Avranches, was a man of deep faith but cautious judgment. One night as he slept, he was visited in a vision by Archangel Michael, commander of the heavenly hosts. The angel appeared in radiant light and commanded him to build a church atop the solitary granite mount rising from the sea. But Aubert hesitated. Perhaps he believed it was only a dream. Perhaps the weight of such a task felt too heavy for mortal shoulders. So he ignored the vision. The angel returned, again and yet again. Still, Aubert doubted. Until finally, Michael pressed his finger against the bishop's forehead, burning a hole directly into the bone to leave a mark that could not be dismissed. That mark, it is said, remained on Aubert's skull until his death. And his obedience followed swiftly after. Construction began atop the rock. But the miracle did not end with the vision. The mount itself, once isolated and barren, became a place of divine convergence. The tides around Mont Saint-Michel are among the most dramatic in Europe, rising and falling with such force and speed that they can trap the unwary. At high tide, the mount becomes an island surrounded by vast ocean. At low tide, it is embraced by golden sands stretching toward the horizon. For centuries, pilgrims braved the shifting waters and unpredictable mists to reach this place. Many believe that walking to Mont Saint-Michel was like walking between worlds, between sea and land, between life and the afterlife, between the silence of man and the whispers of angels. The abbey that stands atop the mount is not merely a feat of medieval engineering. It is an offering of stone and faith, a towering spire built not to dominate, but to point upward, toward heaven. Its halls echo with quiet prayers, its staircases spiral like Jacob's ladder. And in its deepest crypts, shadows fall in strange patterns, as if time itself moves differently here. It is said that monks who lived within these walls often awoke at dawn not by the toll of bells, but by the soft, unseen voices of celestial beings. Even today, some visitors claim to feel a presence, a stillness that is not empty, but full. A place where the veil is thin. Mont Saint-Michel remains one of the few places in the world where architecture, landscape, legend, and mystery blend so seamlessly, it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. And perhaps that is the true miracle of the Mount, that it was not built by angels alone, nor by men alone, but by the meeting of the two. Church of the Nativity, where heaven watched over earth. There is a place tucked within the ancient hills of Bethlehem, where the sky is said to have once opened, and heaven itself leaned close to earth. Long before pilgrims filled the narrow streets, long before stone walls enclosed the sacred cave, this was just a quiet field beneath the stars. But one night, The silence broke. A whisper carried on the wind, a shimmer in the stillness, and an angel appeared. According to Christian scripture and early apocryphal writings, it was Gabriel, the messenger of God, who first brought word of the miracle to come. In a quiet moment of her youth, Mary stood in awe as the angel greeted her, not with fear, but with reassurance. She would bear a child. Not just any child, but one foretold since ancient days. The Savior, the light of the world. The place marked for his arrival was Bethlehem. It was no palace that welcomed him, no throne room draped in silk, but a simple cave used to shelter livestock dug into the soft earth. And yet it was here in this most humble of places that heaven bent low. The Church of the Nativity, built upon this very cave, is not just one of the oldest standing churches in Christendom. It is a threshold, a meeting point between divinity and dust. Beneath its golden mosaics and worn stone floors lies the Grotto of the Nativity, where a silver star marks the exact spot believed to be the birthplace of Christ. It is said that even the animals fell silent that night, sensing something far greater than themselves had entered the world. Throughout centuries, tradition holds that angels stood guard over the infant Savior, singing not to kings or courts, but to shepherds watching over their flocks by night. The message was simple: peace on earth, goodwill to all. And so the skies above Bethlehem glowed with heavenly light, a chorus of divine presence echoing across time. Visitors who descend into the grotto often speak of a stillness, a hush, that feels deeper than silence. Some say they can feel a warmth that doesn't come from candles, but from something older, something sacred. In that dim golden chamber, the boundary between heaven and earth seems to vanish. For many, the Church of the Nativity is not merely a monument, it is a promise. That light can come from the darkest places. That hope is born not in grandeur, but in humility. And that sometimes angels still walk among us, unseen, but never absent. But not all sacred truths were allowed to remain. As the centuries passed, a new kind of power began to shape the face of faith, not divine, but imperial. If Bethlehem was where heaven touched earth, then Rome became the place where earth decided what heaven should look like. The role of Rome. When empire intervened in religion, it began subtly at first. As Christianity spread across regions and languages, it drew the attention of emperors not only as a growing faith, but as a powerful tool. The Roman Empire, once the fiercest persecutor of Christians, soon became its most vocal patron. And with that shift came something far more complex: the marriage of theology and politics. At the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, convened by Emperor Constantine himself, bishops were gathered not simply to discuss doctrine, but to define it. Questions that once lived in mystery were voted on. Debates about the divinity of Christ, the structure of the Trinity, the calendar of Easter, were all decided under the shadow of imperial power. But beyond the theology, something deeper was happening. Books once passed from hand to hand in secret, cherished in remote monasteries and desert caves, were being evaluated. Some were approved. Others quietly disappeared. Later councils like Constantinople, 381 AD, and Chalcedon, 451 AD, continued this effort, solidifying a canon and silencing the rest. And much later, during the Council of Trent, in the 16th century, the divide between what was scripture and what was heresy became sharper than ever before. Entire texts, like the Book of Enoch, the Apocalypse of Abraham, the Book of Jubilees, and the Book of Giants, were cast aside. Not because they lacked spiritual insight, but because they didn't fit the structure Rome had begun to build. A structure of control, order, and orthodoxy. And so the sacred became curated, but fragments survived. In Ethiopia, in caves near the Dead Sea, in ancient tongues no longer spoken aloud. Tonight, as we trace the footsteps of prophets and angels, let us also remember the hands that tried to erase them. For even the most divine light can be hidden, but never fully extinguished. The Ethiopian Church today. Yet while the Roman Empire drew sharp lines and silenced voices in the highlands of Ethiopia, a different story was quietly unfolding. Far from the councils of Nicaea or the walls of Constantinople, a sacred flame continued to burn, untouched, unaltered, and alive. The Ethiopian Church today, a sacred flame carried through millennia, high atop misty plateaus and within ancient stone monasteries carved directly into the cliffs. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has preserved something rare, a memory of the faith unedited. Here scrolls are still copied by hand, ancient chants still echo through stone chambers, and the stories cast aside elsewhere were never forgotten. While the West abandoned the Book of Enoch, Jubilees, Baruch, and the Book of Tobit, Ethiopia kept reading them not as curiosities, but as canon. They are not fringe in this tradition. They are foundational. And so within this community, the ancient voices continue to speak across the centuries. Priests known as Depteras memorize vast portions of these sacred books by heart. They are scholars and singers, exorcists and healers. They walk barefoot through mountain trails with scrolls tucked beneath their robes, some as old as the churches themselves. And the churches, from the rock-hewn wonders of Lalibela to the remote monasteries of Lake Tana, these are not just buildings. They are living time capsules. In dim candlelight, monks chant in Ge'ez, the liturgical language unchanged for more than 1,000 years. Their melodies rise through the incense smoke, as if trying to reach the heavens their ancestors once glimpsed. The Ark of the Covenant, long lost to the Western world, is said to rest within the chapel of Axum, guarded night and day. No one is allowed to see it except one appointed guardian, chosen for life. And though many question the claim, the people here do not doubt. For them, faith is not built on proof, but on continuity. To be Ethiopian Orthodox is to carry something, a lineage, a burden, a blessing. The people do not shout their truths. They live them in rhythm with the seasons, the scriptures, and the sacred songs passed down through whispers. Even as modernity presses in from roads, electricity, the internet, the ancient faith endures. Not frozen in time, but pulsing quietly beside it. A reminder that not all sacredness needs spectacle. Sometimes it simply needs guardianship. And so when the world asks where the lost books went, the answer is simple. They were never lost. They were simply kept by hands that refused to forget, by a people who saw no need to rewrite what was already holy, by a church that still believes truth is not decided by vote, but revealed by light. Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine the soft rustle of a leather-bound Ge'ez manuscript, the low hum of a twilight chant, a flickering candle in the ancient hills. And remember, there are still corners of the earth where mystery sleeps peacefully, watched over by those who never stopped believing. Aliens and ancient prophecies. What the Bible might be telling us as the echoes of Revelation fade and the shadow of the beast dissolves into silence. A different mystery begins to rise, not from the earth, but from the stars. It is a question older than history, and one that continues to haunt modern minds. Are we alone in the universe? And if not, what did ancient prophets know that we might have forgotten? The Bible, for many, is a book of spiritual wisdom and moral law. But hidden within its pages are strange encounters, celestial beings, and sky-born visions that some believe hint at something more: contact with otherworldly intelligences, the chariots of fire. Ezekiel's mysterious vision. In Ezekiel chapter 1, the prophet describes a vision so bizarre and detailed that even modern readers are stunned. I looked and I saw a windstorm coming out of the north, an immense cloud with flashing lightning and surrounded by brilliant light. The center of the fire looked like glowing metal. Ezekiel 1:4. He goes on to describe 4 living creatures, wheels within wheels, and a platform of shining crystal. The wheels could move in any direction without turning, and above them was something that looked like a throne, and on it a figure like a man. Was Ezekiel seeing a divine vision? Or was he describing a spacecraft in terms he could understand? Some theorists, including those in the ancient astronaut school of thought, suggest that this and similar passages are records of extraterrestrial visitations interpreted through ancient language. The sons of God and the Nephilim. In Genesis 6, 1-4, we find another strange passage. The sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them. Who were these sons of God? Were they fallen angels, celestial beings, or possibly beings from another world? The Nephilim, often translated as giants, were described as powerful and influential. Some researchers believe this story reflects early human contact with non-human entities, beings who altered the course of humanity itself. Fiery ascensions and celestial vehicle. The Bible contains multiple accounts of individuals being taken up to heaven in extraordinary ways. The prophet Elijah, for instance, does not die. Instead, he is taken by a chariot of fire that ascends in a whirlwind. As they were walking along and talking together, suddenly, a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them. And Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. In Kings 2:11. Similarly, Enoch walked with God and then was no more because God took him. Genesis 5:24. Could these be descriptions of ascension or abduction, the Watchers and the Book of Enoch? Outside of the canonical Bible, the Book of Enoch describes the Watchers, angelic beings who descended to earth, taught humans advanced knowledge, and fathered giants. These beings, once revered, are later judged and imprisoned by God. The level of detail in the Book of Enoch names functions cosmic laws, leads some to wonder if these accounts are myth allegory or fragmented memories of alien contact. The stars will fall from heaven. In Matthew 24:29, Jesus foretells, the stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. And in Revelation, John writes, the sky receded like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. Revelation 6:14. These are not quiet symbolic images. They are violent shifts in the heavens' descriptions that evoke cosmic events, or perhaps celestial interventions far beyond our understanding. Prophets or witnesses? Were the ancient prophets simply visionaries? Or were they witnesses to events they lacked the vocabulary to explain? Modern technology, rockets, space travel, nuclear fire would seem like magic to those in the past. Perhaps some of what we now call visions were ancient encounters with entities from realms beyond our own. And yet, whether alien or angelic, the message remains strangely consistent. There is more beyond this world. We are being watched, and something or someone will return. So now, as your thoughts drift skyward past clouds and constellations, let yourself wonder. Let the silence of stars wrap around you. Let your breath match the rhythm of a cosmos you do not yet understand. Sleep beneath a sky that has always watched back. Sleep where prophets once looked up and trembled. Sleep while mysteries orbit gently above your dreams. The tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Hidden meanings at the dawn of creation. Before floods and prophecies, before commandments etched in stone or scrolls unfurled in Revelation, there was a garden, a quiet, perfect garden. And in its center stood two trees. One gave life, the other gave knowledge. And from these two trees flowed the first mystery of the Bible, a mystery that still speaks to every soul. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to choose? The Garden of Eden, origins of the two trees. In Genesis 2:9, the narrative begins. And out of the ground made the Lord God to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil are not just botanical details in a myth. They represent two distinct paths, one of eternal union with the divine, the other of separation through moral autonomy. The tree of life is never forbidden. It stands as a gift, a source of divine vitality. The other, however, is restricted. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. Genesis 2:17. Why would a tree that grants knowledge lead to death? Why place it within reach? A choice beyond innocence. The fruit was not poisoned. The danger was not biological, but spiritual. In eating it, Adam and Eve awakened to the weight of moral consequence. They became aware not only of good and evil, but of shame, separation, and self. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. Genesis 3:7. It was the birth of human consciousness and the exile from divine intimacy. Some see the story as a fall. Others see it as a necessary step towards spiritual maturity. Either way, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil became the axis of the human condition, the gift and burden of choice. The tree of life, lost and longed for. After the expulsion from Eden, God places cherubim and a flaming sword to guard the tree of life, lest he put forth his hand and take also of the tree of life and eat and live forever. Genesis 3:22. Immortality once offered is now withheld. Humanity must now walk the long path of time, bearing both memory and longing. The tree of life becomes a symbol of what was lost and what might one day be restored. Echoes in Proverbs and the cross. The tree of life is not forgotten. It reappears in the Book of Proverbs. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed. Proverbs 3:18. And in the Christian tradition, many see the cross as a hidden echo of the tree of life, a paradoxical symbol where death brings resurrection and suffering births eternal union. Revelation, the tree restored. In the final book of the Bible, the tree of life returned. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Revelation 22:2. From Genesis to Revelation, the tree of life stands at both the beginning and the end of time. It is origin and destiny, fall and restoration. It whispers of a home we lost and a paradise promised. So now as you lay in stillness, let the trees return. Let Eden bloom in your mind. Let your breath move like a breeze through ancient branches. And sleep knowing that life, true life, was always rooted in love. Sleep beneath a garden yet to be restored. Sleep until the leaves begin to shine again. Sleep and remember the trees. Angels in the Bible, messengers, warriors, and watchers of heaven. Long before stories of dragons and beasts, before kingdoms rose or fell, there were angels, not soft-winged cherubs on greeting cards, but beings of light and fire, whose presence shook mountains and silenced kings. In the Bible, angels are not metaphors. They are real active agents of the divine messengers, protectors, judges, and warriors. But what exactly are angels? What do they look like? Do they still appear today? Let us walk softly through Scripture and trace their luminous footprints across burning bushes, battlefield skies, and whispered prayers in the dark. Angels as messengers, bearing God's voice. The word angel comes from the Greek angelos, meaning messenger. Throughout the Bible, they appear to deliver divine messages. Gabriel tells Mary she will bear the Son of God, Luke 1:26-38. An angel stops Abraham from sacrificing Isaac at Genesis 22:11-12. Angels bring news of Jesus' resurrection at the empty tomb, Matthew 28:2-7. They are not simply voices. They shine. They inspire awe. And often their first words are, "Do not be afraid." Each appearance carries weight. Their presence turns ordinary ground into holy soil. Angels as protectors and guides. In Psalm 91:11 we read, "For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways." Angels protected Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel 6:22 guided Lot out of Sodom, Genesis 19, and encamped around Elisha, invisible to the fearful, until revealed by prayer, 2 Kings 6:17. They are sentinels between worlds. Their protection is unseen, but deeply felt like a breath at your back in the moment of greatest need. the hosts of heaven warriors in the cosmic battle. Angels do not only guard and guide, they fight. In Revelation 12:7, we see this vivid scene. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon. Michael the archangel is a warrior, a commander, and his army does not sleep. The Lord of hosts is not a poetic title. It means commander of angelic armies, a celestial force arrayed against darkness. This vision is not symbolic alone. It's the spiritual architecture behind the veil of our daily world. Terrifying beauty, what angels really look like. Forget white robes and soft halos. The biblical description of angels often borders on surreal. Seraphim with 6 wings covering face, feet, and flying, Isaiah 6:2. Cherubim with 4 faces, man, lion, ox, eagle, and 4 wings, Ezekiel 1:5-10. Wheels within wheels, full of eyes, Ezekiel 1:15-21. These are beings of complexity and power. Their forms reflect functions, their appearance awe. When humans see these beings, they often fall to the ground in terror. Angels are not to be taken lightly. They are beings of another order. The Book of Hebrews, angels still walk among us. The Bible hints that angels may still move quietly through our world. Hebrews 13:2 offers this gentle reminder. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing. Some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Perhaps you have met one, perhaps you didn't even know. A touch, a glance, a whisper in the dark. They may be closer than we dare believe. Guardian angels assigned to every soul. Jesus, speaking of children, says in Matthew 18:10, "See that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven." Some interpret this as evidence of personal guardian angels, spirits assigned to accompany and protect each soul. The idea is comforting, not only that we are protected, but that we are known. The angel of the Lord, a divine mystery. In several Old Testament stories, a figure called the angel of the Lord appears, but speaks with divine authority, receives worship, and speaks as if he were God himself. To Hagar in the desert, Genesis 16. To Moses in the burning bush, Exodus 3. Who is this being? An angel, a theophany. Or something more mysterious, a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ. The boundary between messenger and master becomes blurred. Divinity speaks through the flame. Modern testimonies, do angels still visit? Beyond scripture, countless modern accounts describe angelic encounters. A stranger who lifts a car off a trapped child, a voice that urges someone not to board a doomed flight. Glowing figures seen in moments of crisis or awe. Many dismiss these as coincidence. Others feel the touch of wings. Perhaps the age of angels never passed. Perhaps our sight has only dimmed. Not all light is good, angels who fed. The Bible warns that not all spiritual beings are benevolent. Revelation 12 tells of a third of the angels rebelling with Lucifer and being cast out. Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. 2 Corinthians 11:14. There are watchers and there are deceivers. Discernment is essential. Even the brightest wings may cast a false shadow. Why angels matter today. In a world of noise and chaos, angels remind us of a greater order. Of battles we cannot see, of messages still sent, of protection we didn't know we needed. And perhaps above all, of a love so vast, it sends beings of fire and light to walk beside us. So tonight, as your thoughts quiet, listen, not for trumpets or wings, but for the silence between. Let your breath soften. Let your body rest. Let unseen hands stand watch as you sleep. You are not alone. Sleep beneath wings too great to see. Sleep under the gaze of eyes that do not close. Sleep, for heaven does not forget. As we journey from the towering visions of angelic hosts and scripture beings of firelight and judgment, we find that not all celestial messengers come with wings ablaze or trumpets in hand. Some, it seems, walk softly hidden in leaf and shadow. In traditions far from Jerusalem, amid the rivers and forests of the Americas, tales have long spoken of tiny beings, watchers, protectors, mischief makers, and guides. Not metaphor, not myth alone, but something believed, something remembered. The existence of tiny angels in the Americas. When people hear stories and ancient legends about fairies, elves, or little people, most often they think of green meadows in Ireland or the Highlands of Scotland. But how many would imagine that tiny angels dwell in the Americas? If you've ever watched the documentary The Fairy Faith, you'll come across the Eskasoni tribe, who preserve many tales about the little people. The Eskasoni say that the little ones have lived in the hills of Nova Scotia for centuries. Elders in the village warn children to stay away from certain mountains, fearing the little people might take them away. These stories continue to be told and referenced in the film The Fairy Faith. They are remarkably well known. The Shoshone tribe of the Midwest have their own name for these little beings, the Nemeragar. According to legend, the Nemeragar were a race of small people who inhabited the Rocky Mountains, especially the Pedro Mountains and areas near the Wind River. The Shoshone believed these beings guarded their homeland fiercely and used poisoned arrows as weapons. A tiny mummified body found in the San Pedro Mountains is believed by some to be evidence of the Nemeragar's existence, exactly the kind of being the Shoshone have described for generations. Did you know that most Native American tribes in both the United States and Canada believe in the existence of tiny spiritual beings? They call them little people, and each tribe holds its own unique beliefs and stories about them. I was once surprised to learn that Native Americans believed in such tiny spirits. But now I understand. Most cultures seem to have created their own fairy figures, so it makes perfect sense that Native Americans, who have long lived in harmony with nature, would hold beliefs not so different from ancient Celtic or other European peoples. The mystery of the tiny mummy. One famous tale involves the so-called tiny mummy, discovered in the 1930s in the San Pedro Mountains. It was said to belong to a race of little people who once lived in caves within the mountains. The mummy was found seated upright, just about 18 centimeters tall, with a flat skull and dark skin barely taller than a foot if stretched out straight. Could this mummy be physical proof of the Native Americans' belief in little people? Unfortunately, the mummy disappeared shortly after its discovery, and no further research has been done since the 1950s. Most scientists examining photographs of the mummy claim it was likely a deformed fetus. But questions remain. Why did the mummy have a full set of adult teeth? If someone could scientifically examine the mummy, perhaps it would confirm the presence of an actual tiny person, and could even link to old world legends of little beings from Europe that crossed the Atlantic long ago. Faith in tiny beings. Across the Americas. If you watch the documentary Faith in the Fairies, it talks about the Eskasoni tribe, and there are many legends about the little people. The Eskasoni say that the little people have lived in the hills of Nova Scotia for centuries. Many villagers warn children to stay away from this mountain for fear that the little people will take them away. The Eskasoni stories that continue to connect or mention the little people can be seen in the film Faith in the Fairies. These are really famous stories. The Shoshone tribe of Mixcos has its own name for the legendary little people, the Nemeragar. The Nemeragar were a race of little people who lived in the Rocky Mountains, specifically in the Pedro Mountains or near the Wind River. The Shoshone believed that these little people were quite protective of their homes and used bows and arrows as weapons. Of course, the arrows were poisoned. The little people mummified in the San Pedro Mountains are actually considered a hypothetical case of the Nemeragar, a race of little people that the Shoshone believed existed for many years. On the Hawaiian Islands, the native people believe in tiny beings called the Menehune. These little folk are said to live in Hawaii's deep forests and mountain valleys. According to lore, they inhabited the islands before the arrival of Polynesians. They're credited with building ancient structures like the Menehune Fish Pond at Niumalu and the Kikiaola Ditch near Waimea. The Choctaw people of the mainland also believe in little people whom they call the Quanokasha. These beings are often feared. One Choctaw tale describes how a Quanokasha would take a young boy into a cave to test his destiny. At the cave's entrance stood 3 wise men. The boy would be presented with 3 items: a knife, a pouch of poisonous herbs, and a pouch of healing herbs. Choosing the knife might mean he'd grow up to become a killer. Choosing the poison would turn him into one who harms his community. But if he chose the healing herbs, he'd become a healer. Like in Hawaii and among the Shoshone, the Choctaw believe the little people live in mountain caves and are usually just 1 or 2 feet tall. Among the Cherokee, there are 3 types of little people: the Laurel people, the Rock people, and the Dogwood people. The Rock people are feared. They kidnap children and react aggressively if disturbed. The Laurel people are mischievous and like to play tricks such as tying your fishing line to a stick to make you believe you've caught a big fish, only to make you laugh when you find nothing. Their aim is to keep your spirit playful. The Dogwood people, on the other hand, are said to be kind-hearted and often offer care to giants when they can. The Crow people believe in the Nurumbi tiny beings who dwell in the Pryor Mountains. They are said to have granted visions to Chief Plenty Coups that helped unify and protect the Crow tribe in the early 20th century. Even today, some Crows say they leave offerings at Pryor Gap in thanks for the Nurumbi's guidance and protection. Dozens of Native American tribes share legends of little people, many involving magical interventions during crises. So why should we dismiss these widespread cultural stories about tiny beings? Perhaps the fairies of Ireland and the elves of Europe are simply different names for the same entities believed in by the Native Americans. Maybe these aren't angels in the winged sense, but wise, diminutive beings deeply rooted in nature and spiritual healing. While we may never know what they were, it is certain that many legends and beliefs about the little people will always exist. Real angel encounters in modern North America. Because in this day and age, the little people that Native Americans believed in have disappeared. Many people, both Native Americans and newcomers to the continent, have had encounters with little people, or what many call little angels or fairies. Even in the suburbs of Tampa Bay, Florida, I had 3 experiences with little people. They weren't really encounters with angels or anything major. A favorite story comes from a woman featured in part 6 of the Fairy Faith. While hiking in the forest with her daughter, she heard a strange sound music, like nothing she'd ever heard. There were no people nearby. The sound grew louder. She asked her daughter if she heard it too. The girl nodded. Feeling uneasy, the woman decided they should leave. As they drove away, the daughter glanced back despite being told not to and saw a circle of tiny people dancing joyfully. She kept it secret for years, afraid no one would believe her. Now grown, she finally shared what she saw, not just music, but beings. As their car drove away, she looked back despite her mother telling her not to and saw a group of little people all dancing together and looking very happy. She didn't tell anyone for years, afraid that no one would believe her and would only make people laugh by recounting this fairy tale encounter. Another story was told by a woman about something that happened when she was a child. She and her younger sister woke up one morning to see a group of tiny angels dancing on a toy shelf mounted on the wall. They were small, had wings, and looked very friendly and joyful. Even to this day, the woman firmly believes that those tiny angels were real. Were they truly angels with delicate wings, or beings related to the Native American legends of little people? Or perhaps the two are entirely different. Were these little people believed in by indigenous tribes merely another race or something more divine? We may never truly know the answer to these questions. But if you ask me, I'd say that's a good thing. Why ruin something so beautiful? If we were ever to discover a living little person from Native American folklore, or a tiny angel, it's likely that in today's world, they would be subjected to tests and experiments, studied and exploited until all the magic faded away. And so the idea of little angels, or tiny people, continues to live on in my imagination and my reality. I don't need science to prove or disprove their existence. So let them remain where they belong, not in cages or laboratories, but in dreams and folklore, in the hush of twilight, and the rustle of leaves. Let them dance in the corners of our vision and whisper stories to us when the world grows quiet. Now, as the night deepens and the stars begin to watch from above, you can let go of the need to know, to define, to prove. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts soften. Sleep now under a sky where mysteries are safe and wonder is still sacred. Sleep, as if the tiny angels were keeping watch just beyond the edge of sight. Sleep, and may your dreams carry you to places where the small and the sacred still thrive. And as the stories of tiny angels fade like morning mist through the ferns, where ancient forests still whisper and small, watchful eyes linger in the quiet shadows, we begin to look upward, no longer to the hidden folk beneath leaf and moss, but to the vast, shimmering sky above, where a billion stars flicker like the breath of the universe. In that stillness, a question stirs deep in the human heart. Who made all this? And so our journey continues from the folklore of the forest to the revelations of the telescope. From the whispers of ancient spirits to the echoes of modern science, all leading us back to one wonder-filled idea. Perhaps we are not alone. Perhaps there is a greater mind waiting to be seen. So now let your thoughts drift across galaxies and strands of DNA and listen closely. Can you hear it? The universe may be whispering the name of its maker. Science finds compelling evidence for the existence of a creator. Recent discoveries are prompting many scientists to reconsider the origins of our universe. With the development of more advanced and powerful telescopes previously hidden, cosmic mysteries are being revealed, offering astonishing new scientific insights into the beginnings of life. These discoveries, combined with what molecular biologists have found about the complex coding within DNA, have led many scientists to admit that the universe and life itself appears to be part of an intricate design. Surprisingly, many scientists are now speaking openly about God, even though they previously had no religious belief. So, what are these startling discoveries that are causing scientists to reference a Creator 3 revolutionary breakthroughs spanning cosmology and molecular science stand out? The universe had a beginning. The universe is fine-tuned for life. DNA reveals signs of intelligence. The statements made by leading scientists regarding these findings may truly surprise you. The universe had a beginning. Since the dawn of civilization, humans have gazed up at the stars, wondering what they are and how they came to be. On a clear night, the naked eye can only see about 6,000 stars. But telescopes like Hubble have shown us that there are over 1 billion trillion stars grouped into more than 100 billion galaxies. In truth, our sun is no more than a grain of sand among the world's beaches. But before the 20th century, most scientists believed our galaxy was the entire universe, consisting of no more than 100 million stars. For centuries, scientists believed the universe had no beginning. They thought that matter, space, and energy, the very fabric of our universe, had always existed. But in the early 20th century, astronomer Edwin Hubble discovered that the universe is expanding. By tracing this expansion backward, he calculated that everything, matter, energy, space, even time, had a definite beginning. This discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Many scientists, including Einstein, initially rejected it. In what Einstein later called the biggest blunder of my life, he altered his equations to avoid the conclusion that the universe had a starting point. One of the most vocal opponents was British astronomer Fred Hoyle, who mockingly dubbed the beginning of the universe the Big Bang. He fiercely defended the belief in an eternal, unchanging universe. Then, in 1992, data from the Kobe satellite confirmed that the universe had indeed begun in a burst of light and energy. Some scientists began referring to it as the moment of creation, the Big Bang. Astronomer Robert Jastrow helped the public imagine how it began, It's like watching the explosion of a gigantic hydrogen bomb. The moment that bomb detonates marks the birth of the universe. The conclusion: everything in our universe came from nothing. Science cannot tell us exactly what or who caused the universe to begin, but many believe it strongly points toward a creator. Even agnostic scientists have suggested that the only reasonable explanation for the Big Bang is the guiding hand of a transcendent power. Cosmologists soon realized that the explosion of the universe would have been chaotic and lifeless unless it had been finely tuned in advance. This implies that someone planned it. Scientists began using terms like creator, supreme intelligence, and even God to describe this designer, a universe fine-tuned for life. Physicists have calculated that in order for life to exist, the laws governing gravity and other forces in the universe must be incredibly precise. For example, if the universe's rate of expansion had been slightly slower after the Big Bang, gravity would have pulled everything back together into a big crunch. As Stephen Hawking wrote, if the expansion rate 1 second after the Big Bang had been smaller by even 1 part in 100,000 million, the universe would have recollapsed before reaching its current size. Conversely, if it had expanded just a bit faster, galaxies, stars, and planets might never have formed, and life as we know it wouldn't exist. For life to thrive, the conditions of our solar system and planet must also be just right. We know that without oxygen in our atmosphere, we couldn't breathe. Without oxygen, water couldn't exist. And without water, there would be no rain for crops. Essential elements like calcium, hydrogen, nitrogen, sodium, carbon, and phosphorus are all required for life. But that's not all. The size, temperature, distance, and chemical makeup of Earth, the Sun, and the Moon all have to be perfectly aligned. In fact, dozens of precise conditions must be met. While scientists who believe in God see this as intentional design, atheists and agnostics struggle to explain what seem to be cosmic coincidences. The universe. An accident or a miracle? What are the odds that human life emerged by chance from the chaos of the Big Bang? One astronomer calculated the odds as less than 1 in 1,000 trillion. To put it another way, the chance of a blindfolded person finding a marked grain of sand among all the world's beaches is vastly more likely. The odds of life arising from a random Big Bang are equivalent to someone winning 1,000 Mega Millions lottery jackpots in a row, buying only 1 ticket each time. Impossible exactly. That's why many scientists conclude that someone behind the scenes designed and created our universe. Still others continue to search for alternative explanations. DNA. The language of life. In 1950, molecular biologists discovered the intricate structure of DNA. This tiny molecule is like the brain of every cell in our bodies and in all living organisms. The more they've studied DNA, the more scientists are amazed by its brilliance. Some, like Richard Dawkins, claim DNA evolved through natural selection without a creator. But even leading evolutionists admit that the origin of DNA's complexity is still unexplainable. Its structure is so sophisticated that Francis Crick, co-discoverer of DNA's double helix, believed it couldn't have originated naturally on Earth. He theorized that life must have come from somewhere beyond our planet. The encoded information within DNA reveals a level of intelligence beyond imagination. A single gram of DNA contains enough data to fill thousands of books, enough to circle the globe 5,000 times. And DNA functions like a language with its own complex software code. In the early 21st century, famed atheist Antony Flew stunned the scientific world when he changed his mind after decades of disbelief. What caused the shift? His study of DNA. Flew explained, "What I think the DNA sequences have done is to show that such intelligence must have been involved in making these diverse and extraordinary molecules stick together. I see these incredibly complex results as the work of an intelligence." It now seems to me that the findings of more than 50 years of DNA research have provided the material for a powerful new theory. Life and the universe bear the marks of a creator. Have scientists now presented convincing evidence that a creator has left his fingerprints on the universe? While many still lean toward excluding God from the origin of the cosmos, an increasing number have come to recognize the religious implications of these discoveries. So what if, after all, the creator truly exists? If there is a creator with supreme intelligence, what might he be like? Is he merely a cosmic force, as portrayed in films like Star Wars, or is he a being with personal attributes like us? Since we are beings of individuality and relationships, could the one who made us also possess these qualities? Many scientists, such as Arthur L. Shallow, professor at Stanford University and Nobel laureate in physics, believe that these discoveries point compellingly to the existence of a creator. He wrote, "It seems to me that when confronted with the wonders of life and the universe, one must ask why, rather than just how. The only possible answers are religious. I find a need for God in the universe and in my own life. As we've seen, science cannot answer the question of who the Creator is or the purpose of life. Yet the Bible has long affirmed that the universe was created out of nothing and perhaps holds even more profound secrets. So then who might the Creator be? 2,000 years ago, a man walked this earth, claiming to hold the answers to life. His time here was brief, yet his impact continues to shape the world. His name was Jesus Christ. At nearly the same time in the East, two other extraordinary figures, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, and Lao Tzu, also appeared to enlighten humanity. Ancient records tell us that these enlightened ones repeatedly demonstrated abilities that defied the laws of nature. They were wise, humble, and compassionate. But could they be the supreme intelligence that Einstein once referenced? Might they be the ones behind the cosmos? Upon closer study of sacred texts, the answer appears to be no. Scripture suggests that it is the Almighty God who flung the stars into space, fine-tuned the cosmos, and designed the code of DNA. In Judaism, Jesus is seen not as God himself, but as a divinely appointed messenger sent to lead and redeem God's people. The Qur'an of Islam honors Jesus as an important prophet who performed miracles and delivered the Injil gospel, yet denies his divinity. Taoist texts and Buddhist sutras never claim that Lao Tzu or the Buddha created the universe. They too appear to have been sent during the same epoch as Jesus, perhaps for a divine mission, one of guidance, not of creation. So who is the Creator? The truth is, we have heard of him, but never truly known him. He is a being of infinite power, able to create life, control time and space, and transcend death itself. How could finite beings like us comprehend such a presence? There is only one path: spiritual cultivation, moral elevation, and the preservation of true faith. Only through these can we receive the grace and blessing of knowing, even glimpsing the hand of the Creator. So now, as your breath softens and the stars settle into their silent orbits, let your thoughts rest not in answers, but in awe. The galaxies may still spin with questions. The code of life may remain a mystery. But somewhere beyond time, beyond sight, the hand that wrote it all is still writing, still watching, still waiting. Close your eyes gently. Feel the stillness between each heartbeat. For in that space, perhaps he whispers, "Sleep now, not to escape the world, but to draw closer to its maker. Sleep beneath a sky designed with love. Sleep and dream of beginnings born from light. Sleep in the quiet certainty that you are not alone." How does the Book of Revelation help people recognize the Messiah in modern times? According to the Book of Revelation, Jesus, described as the bright morning star, came to the world under the command of God the Father to teach humanity how to attain salvation when the day of judgment arrives. He also left behind instructions that would help future generations recognize the Messiah when he returns to save all beings. So what are those signs? Is the end time approaching? Revelation says the Messiah will intervene and bring an end to centuries of suffering and oppression. The Creator, who is also the Savior, wants humanity to know that he will act. The Bible reveals that human history will enter a special period, one that will end on a day known as the end time. This period will be marked by global events and conditions unlike anything humanity has ever experienced. Here are some signs that have been foretold. Global upheaval. A prophecy recorded in Matthew 24 outlines a series of events that will serve as a composite sign, marking the end of the age and leading to the time of the end, verses 3 to 14. These signs include major conflicts, earthquakes in various places, an increase in wickedness, loss of love, and deceitful leaders who mislead many, verses 6 to 26. Human behavior. The Bible describes the last days, the period leading up to the end time, as being marked by a deep moral decline. 2 Timothy 3:1-4 says, "People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of the good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God." Destruction of the earth. The Bible compares the end time to the days of Noah. Now the earth was corrupt in God's sight and was full of violence. God saw how corrupt the earth had become. Ask yourself, just over a century ago, did humanity have the power to destroy itself? Today, humans demonstrate that power through environmental destruction and stockpiling advanced weaponry. Technological progress seems unable to anticipate or prevent catastrophic outcomes. But perhaps the fate of the earth is no longer in human hands. The gospel proclaimed worldwide. One of the clearest signs of the end time is this. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. Matthew 24:14. This global proclamation is unlike centuries of forced conversion. It signals a universal message of truth, one aligned with the cosmic laws of the Creator. How is the Messiah described in the Bible? The Messiah is portrayed as a being of infinite power, King of kings and Lord of lords across the universe. He is called faithful and true, the victorious King, for his salvation is absolute. And when he returns to rescue mankind, he will arise from the lands of the east. Will the Messiah save people by appearing from the sky and performing miracles? When we think of the Messiah's mission to save humanity, many of us tend to imagine a dramatic arrival descending from the skies, working dazzling miracles, rescuing the few righteous left as the earth splits and the heavens collapse. But perhaps this naive image is precisely why many do not believe in the stories of the Messiah. They do not trust in divine revelations recorded in the sacred texts of the ancients. Yet the presence of the Messiah among humankind is not like that. He will appear as a human being, walking among us to transmit his law. Even in Psalm 1, it is made clear that those who are saved by the Messiah are those who live by his law. And on the day of judgment, he will use that very law as the standard by which all are judged. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. So what is this law of the Lord? It is a path that transforms what is lofty into simplicity, brings peace to the soul, and offers clarity without confusion. Psalm 19 beautifully describes the nature of God's law. The law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. In these verses, we see that salvation is not granted through spectacle, but through transformation from within. The Messiah does not need to shake the heavens with thunder to reach you. His law does the work softly, surely awakening the soul, restoring peace, and illuminating the eyes of those willing to see. Listen with your conscience. Listen to the call of the divine. History has already shown us that the path to salvation is not easy. In a world engulfed by illusions, where truth and falsehood are intertwined, will we be able to recognize him? One day, someone may come to you with a message, good news proclaiming the law of the Lord. But the one who brings it may not be a glowing angel with wings of light. They might look just like you. They may appear from all corners of the earth, delivering this message in ways both subtle and bold. And for you to be saved, many among them will have endured slander, persecution, and brutal oppression, some even giving up their lives. Yet, not a word of resentment is spoken. With boundless compassion, all they wish for is your redemption. So listen. Listen with your conscience. The voices of the divine are calling right beside you. After the great judgment, all that is good will remain. That which has strayed far from the benevolent nature of the universe will be removed. The world will enter an era of glory, an age of true peace and joy. The Messiah will return in triumph, and his work will be complete. And then in the chorus of the redeemed, the hallelujah shall ring. Praise be to God, Lord of all creation, mighty and sovereign. The kingdoms of this world have become the kingdom of our Lord, and he shall reign forever and ever, King of kings, Lord of lords. His dominion shall stand for all eternity. He is the King of kings, forever and ever, forever and ever. He shall reign, and his throne shall endure for all time. His kingdom shall be unshaken for endless ages, forever and ever, forever and ever, forever and ever, forever and ever. Hallelujah. The Prophecies of the Creator. 500 years ago, Gautama Buddha told his disciples that during the era of the Dharma's decline, his teachings would no longer be able to save humanity. At that time, the wheel-turning holy king Chakravartin would descend to the human world to transmit the true law of the universe and deliver all beings. Many prophecies also state that today's human society is in an exceptionally unique period, on the brink of a great catastrophe that could affect all of humanity. Some people hold a rigid belief. If the sky collapses, everyone dies. If something happens, we all suffer together. But is that really true? On the surface, human society might appear normal. But if one pays closer attention, it becomes clear that something is silently stirring. Celestial signs are changing. Extreme weather patterns are on the rise. Natural disasters and man-made calamities are increasing. Wars are breaking out. Could it be that a great transformation is gradually taking shape in the human realm? Humanity is standing at the edge of a perilous abyss. Yet many remain unaware. Perhaps the most pitiable are those who fear neither heaven nor earth, who have lost all faith in anything beyond immediate material gain. They are willing to do anything, no matter how evil. These may be the beings with no future and no hope at all. What do the prophecies of history say? The histories of civilizations across the world all begin with mythology and prophecy. Ancient Greece, ancient India, and Babylon all followed this pattern. Even the 5,000 years of Chinese history read like a grand cosmic mystery. From the Qian Kun Wan Niange of the Zhou dynasty to the Ma Qian prophecies of the Han, the Tui Bei Tu of the Tang, the Plum Blossom poem of the Song and the Burning Cakes, prophecy of the Ming dynasty. Each stable, peaceful reign in Han-dominated China left behind strikingly accurate predictions. Even more mysterious is the fact that alongside each founding emperor, from Zhang Jia, Zhou Zhangliang, Han Shu Maogong, Tang Miao Guang Yi Song Tu, Liu Bo and Ming, the key strategist, was always a Taoist sage. All the ancient civilizations of the world, Egypt, Babylon, and others, are now buried beneath deserts. Modern Egyptians are no longer the same as the ancient Egyptians. Today's Iraqis are not the inheritors of Babylonian civilization. Greek civilization was partially inherited by the Romans, but then destroyed during the invasions of the Germanic tribes. Ancient Indian civilization was ravaged by the Aryans. The once glorious Maya civilization was burned to the ground by the Spanish. The only civilization with uninterrupted records and lineage is China's 5,000-year-old heritage. Thus, regardless of the number of ethnic groups in the world, the origin myths and prophetic visions of human history show striking commonalities. First, there is a shared belief that humanity was created by divine beings. Second, many record the memory of a great flood, a reference point in the past, when human morality declined and a cleansing was necessary. And third, across cultures, legends speak of gods descending to the mortal world to save humanity in the final moments of a cosmic cycle. The prophecies about the Creator. According to ancient prophecies, the Creator will descend to carry out the final judgment. In Africa, the Egyptian pharaohs awaited the gods who would awaken them. The Maya of South America calculated the arrival of a cosmic renewal era. Across the world, people await a monumental historical event, one that is destined to happen. Throughout the vast expanse of heaven and earth, the glory of ancient civilizations is recorded and preserved through myths and legends. Besides the Maya prophecies, there are also the Hopi myths, Aztec predictions, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Roman divine chronicles, the words of Seneca tribal elders, and other Native American chiefs, all foretelling a great event to unfold in the future. Even more astonishing is that Western texts, such as the Book of Revelation in the Bible Code interpretations, Nostradamus's Les Prophéties, Korea's Qur'an, as well as various Buddhist scriptures, all point toward the present day as a critical time. Furthermore, they all share a common conclusion: God will descend to the human world to save mankind in the final hour, followed by a great and ultimate judgment. Why do so many of these prophecies say that a great sage will appear in the East during this era? When Shakyamuni Buddha preached the Dharma in ancient India, why did he say, "Rare it is to be born a human, rarer, still to be born in the central land, and even rarer to encounter and attain the true Dharma"? What is the deeper meaning behind these words? Why does the Bible speak of the descent of the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the end times, and the final judgment? And why do Buddhist texts foretell the coming of Maitreya Buddha to the human world? The prophecies about the Creator. According to ancient prophecies, the Creator will descend to carry out the final judgment. In African traditions, the Egyptian pharaohs awaited divine beings who would come to awaken them. The Maya of South America calculated the arrival of a new cosmic era, a great transformation in the universe. Across every corner of heaven and earth, the glory of ancient civilizations has been preserved through stories passed down from generation to generation. Beyond the well-known Mayan prophecies, the mythology of the Hopi, the visions of the Aztec Egyptian hieroglyphs, Roman divine, chronicles, the revelations of Seneca tribal elders and other Native American chiefs, all foretell that a monumental event will occur in the future. Even more astonishing is that the Book of Revelation in the Christian Bible, the decoded messages of the Bible code, Nostradamus's Les Prophéties, Korea's Qur'an, and many Buddhist scriptures all point to the same conclusion: they converge on the present era. And despite their cultural differences, these prophecies share a common ending. God will descend to the human world in the final hour to save mankind, followed by a universal judgment. Why do so many of these prophecies mention that a great sage or divine figure will appear in the East during this time, when Shakyamuni Buddha preached the Dharma in ancient India? Why did he say, "To be born a human is rare"? Rarer still to be born in the central land, and even rarer to hear and attain the true Dharma. What is the deeper meaning of these words? Why does the Bible speak of the descent of the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the end of days, and the great judgment? And why do Buddhist scriptures foretell the coming of Maitreya, the future Buddha who will descend into the human world? Prophecies reveal that humanity faces a choice in the final days. History is a grand drama unfolding on the stage of the human world, with each act following the script precisely scene after scene without a single mistake. Through the vast, immeasurable ages of the universe, layer upon layer of beings and dimensions have passed through cycles of formation, stasis, degeneration, and destruction until today. In ancient times, humans coexisted with the divine. Guided by gods, they turned their attention inward toward the human body life itself, and the mysteries of the cosmos, laying down the foundations of Taiji, the Heitu, and Luoshu diagrams. The Zhou Yi, the 8 trigrams, traditional Chinese medicine, Chinese characters, and prophetic scriptures. Across the tides of history, many of these prophecies have astonishingly come true. Yet modern people educated under a system of empirical science can scarcely grasp. How could a prophecy exist before the event has even occurred, if something hasn't happened yet? How can it be known? But were these prophecies written merely to prove their own truth? Merely to demonstrate that divine beings exist within this universe? In truth, when one carefully studies them, all these ancient prophecies reveal a unified message. In this present era of history, humanity is about to face a great and monumental turning point. In this current age of history, humanity is on the verge of a great event. But what is that event? This event holds immense importance for all of humanity. According to prophecy, it corresponds to the Khan hexagram, one of the 8 trigrams in the I Ching symbolizing disaster and trials. It foretells a time of widespread suffering and calamity, but also of a great sage descending to teach the law Dharma and save sentient beings. In the era marked by this Khan sign, many people will face destruction, while those who manage to pass through it will enter a beautiful and renewed world. This final Khan hexagram delivers the most crucial warning to mankind. In the past, whether one was good or bad, rich or poor, it was merely a way of life. None of these things determined the outcome. But the Khan is the outcome. It is the result of one's entire being. Life itself is the most precious thing. So whether one can overcome this Khan is the true purpose of all prophecy. The Khan hexagram does not speak of annihilation, but of elimination. It is a form of selection. Each individual is given a chance to choose. In this pivotal moment, everyone is assigning themselves a position. Some believe, some are apathetic, some are fearful, and some fiercely oppose. Each person's response is a choice in itself. To help people avoid losing their way and making the wrong choice, the prophecies also remind us that a great sage will appear and teach people how to survive this great tribulation. However, we have never met this sage before, and naturally, he will not plainly declare who he is. That's why the prophecies also provide clues on how to recognize him. Long ago, Jesus was born in a stable and was hunted from birth. He preached kindness and was crucified on a cross. Confucius lost his father at the age of 3. He taught righteousness, but wandered across kingdoms, suffering hardships in lands like Chen and Kai. Siddhartha Gautama led his disciples in begging for alms and endured slander from outsiders. Laozi left behind the 5,000-character Tao Te Ching before vanishing into the wilderness. Throughout history, great enlightened beings have descended to this world in the form of ordinary humans and have suffered greatly for the sake of saving others. In prophecy, particularly in the Burning Cake song, Xiaobingge by Liu Bowen, it is hinted that the enlightened one shall descend in the future, not born of nobility, not from the royal palace or temples, but from humble countryside roots somewhere in the northeastern lands. In other words, not a prince, not a high priest, but someone from a common background, just like Jesus, the son of a carpenter. We cannot write history, but history itself was recorded to remind us of something to help us find answers. Therefore, the coming sage, like Jesus, will speak many truths that move people deeply and will naturally gain many disciples. Yet he may also face harsh criticism and suffer unimaginable torment. So the true sage is not some glorified hero as we often imagine. How then can we recognize him? A true sage convinces people through reason and virtue, not appearance status or hollow words. The only valid standard of discernment is this. Are the truths he speaks genuine? Are they righteous? Are they free from ego and selfish motive? How do prophecies reveal the way the enlightened one saves mankind? Both the Centuries by Nostradamus and the ancient Chinese prophecy Tuibei Tu provide remarkably clear and detailed predictions. We can also take many lessons from stories throughout history. You may have heard how Noah built a massive ark before the Great Flood, even while others mocked him and called him insane. In another tale, Jigong Taekung, in order to save a family, staged a bride abduction, an act condemned as immoral by society. In Buddhist legend, the monk with the red-eyed lion statue Hong Nyan Tak Su warned people of a great disaster that would occur when the stone lion's eyes turned red. But instead of heeding the warning, people laughed it off until the catastrophe truly struck. In other words, when a great calamity is about to unfold, the methods of salvation may conflict with the beliefs and perceptions of those being saved. They may even appear irrational or offensive to contemporary thinking. Yet regardless of how one perceives it, these actions are solely meant to help you survive, to guide you safely through disaster and toward a brighter fate. Maybe one day you'll hear it by chance. Maybe someone tells you how to survive this great tribulation. It may shake your worldview. You might doubt it. You might dismiss it. But that right there is your choice. Today, many people refuse to believe in prophecies. Perhaps it's not that they can't believe, it's that they don't want to. They don't want to acknowledge it. They don't want anything to happen at all. That's why Tuibei Tu includes this mysterious verse. In the year when all people know 3 characters, they still won't believe the truth. Voices rise in mockery. Spirits weep. Ghosts cry. People don't know what to do. 1 pulls 2 tugs, 3 waits. Still the masses remain asleep. Prophecies have stood for thousands of years unfolding regardless of belief. Whether one accepts them or not, they continue to reveal the miraculous to this world. They offer something precious to humanity, a choice. To believe or not is your decision. But your attitude, whether dismissive, resistant, respectful, or reverent, will lead to different outcomes. Ancient knowledge in modern sleep. Why listening while you sleep might change you. And now, as the final echoes of ancient chants fade into the stillness of the night, one question remains. Why does any of this matter to you, especially now in this modern world of neon lights and restless minds? The answer perhaps lies in how we sleep. Each night as the conscious mind drifts away, another realm awakens. Beneath the surface of dreams lies the subconscious, that deep ocean of memory, emotion, and perception where the seeds of transformation are quietly sown. What enters that space doesn't need to be forceful. It only needs to be gentle and true. This is why the ancient texts still matter. Not because we must memorize their every verse, but because they hold a resonance, a frequency of wisdom that transcends the written word. As we sleep, the body rests, but the soul listens. The stories of Enoch, of Baruch, of the Watchers, and the Garden, they are not mere myths. They are maps of the inner world, where every mountain is a fear to overcome every angel, a guide we once knew, and every fall from Eden, a story we carry within ourselves. Modern neuroscience tells us that the mind absorbs far more than we realize while asleep. Theta waves, those subtle pulses of consciousness, are more receptive than any waking state. In this gentle state of openness, the soul can be reminded of truths it had long forgotten. That light is real. That you are more than flesh and breath. That somewhere in a dimension, not so far, angels still sing. To listen as you fall asleep is to invite something sacred into your night. Not noise, not distraction, but remembrance. Remembrance of a time when humans walked with divine beings, when wisdom was sung, not shouted, when dreams were doorways to the eternal. So tonight as you rest, let these words drift deeper than your ears. Let them touch the silent parts of you that never stopped longing for home. Not the home of brick and stone, but the one of spirit and sky. You do not need to understand everything. You only need to receive. And if sleep takes you in the middle of this telling, let it. For some truths are not meant to be heard fully awake, but to be planted like ancient seeds deep within the soul, waiting for the perfect morning to bloom. The forgotten things are coming back as the final whispers of this sacred journey begin to fade. We are left with a quiet but profound question. What if the ancient voices we thought were lost were never truly gone? In a world gripped by chaos, where storms grow stronger, wildfires rage hotter, and the ground itself trembles, under our feet something deep within us begins to awaken. We are reminded that no matter how much technology we build, no matter how fast we move, something essential has been left behind. Morality has frayed. Compassion seems forgotten. The noise of the world grows louder, but the voice of truth, it whispers. Maybe that's why now, more than ever, so many are turning back not to dogma, but to faith. Not to institutions, but to the divine. The stories we explored tonight, from the Garden of Eden to the visions of Enoch, from the fires of Babylon to the mountaintop of Lalibela, are not just relics of a lost past. They are warnings. They are invitations. They are promises that in the darkest of times, light can still break through. The ancient scriptures, once sealed away, are being read again. The books once banned are now resurfacing. And perhaps that's no accident, because in the silence of night, when the noise fades and the heart is still, the soul remembers what it was made for. Not for hatred, not for division, but for truth, for light, for God. So if your heart feels heavy in these times, let it be the weight of something sacred returning. If your dreams feel strange, maybe they are not dreams at all, but memories of a world that still waits for us to return. And if you feel the pull towards something greater, follow it. Because even now, in this troubled world, the kingdom of God is not far. It lives wherever a soul turns back toward the light. It begins within you. Sleep well tonight, and may the forgotten truths rise gently in your dreams. We are living in a world full of turbulence, pandemics, natural disasters, wars, and endless worries that weigh on family work and everyday life. Have you ever wondered, how can this world ever be free from suffering? How can one live with peace and true happiness? The answer lies in just 3 timeless words: truthfulness, compassion, forbearance. Truthfulness means to be sincere, to live honestly, without deception. Compassion is kindness, empathy, and treating others with a gentle heart. Forbearance is patience, quiet strength, and enduring hardship without anger. These 3 principles woven together form a path not of power, but of deep inner transformation. They lead us back to what is pure, to the good that still lives quietly inside us. And if tonight you feel tired, if the world has made you weary, let these 3 truths become a soft light within. Let truthfulness calm your thoughts. Let compassion warm your breath. Let forbearance carry you gently through the darkness. Now, close your eyes. Let the noise of the day dissolve into stillness. Let the night wind cradle you like a whispered prayer. May truth, compassion, forbearance lull you into restful sleep, not just for rest, but for the quiet renewal of your spirit. Sleep well, dear soul, beneath a world still lit by goodness, still held by hope, still guided by kindness. And if you wish to keep listening to whispers from the past, to ancient wisdom long forgotten, then follow SleepCodex. Not to subscribe to a channel, but to open another doorway a place where each night you quietly walk beside the sacred. We'll be here waiting for you. In the hush of midnight, beneath stars that have never stopped shining. Sleep deeply, and we'll meet again in the next dream.